There are moments in life when a quiet feeling appears inside us, a subtle sense that something deeper is calling beneath the noise of everyday living. Many people cannot explain it clearly, yet they recognize it immediately when it arrives. It may come during a silent morning before the world fully wakes, or during a late night when the mind grows tired of thinking and the heart begins to whisper more honestly. In those moments, a person may suddenly feel that life is more than routines, more than obligations, more than the endless movement from one goal to another. It feels as if there is a hidden signal running quietly through existence, a gentle frequency that has always been present but rarely noticed. This signal does not shout for attention. It does not compete with the noise of modern life. Instead, it waits patiently beneath our thoughts, beneath our fears, beneath the constant activity of the mind. When someone becomes still enough to notice it, even for a brief moment, something inside begins to shift. The mind softens, the body relaxes, and the heart senses that it is touching something ancient and familiar at the same time. For centuries, people have tried to describe this mysterious connection using many different words. Some call it the presence of God. Others call it universal consciousness, divine intelligence, or the source of life itself. Different cultures give it different names, yet the experience behind those names remains remarkably similar. When a person becomes aligned with this deeper frequency, their perception of reality begins to change. Stress loses some of its grip, clarity replaces confusion, and intuition becomes stronger than constant overthinking. Decisions start to feel guided rather than forced. Opportunities appear in ways that seem almost effortless. It is not that life suddenly becomes perfect, but something inside the person becomes ordered, calm, and deeply centered. Instead of fighting against the current of existence, they begin to move with it. What is fascinating is that this signal is not something reserved for spiritual masters or people living far away from the modern world. It is not limited to monks, mystics, or philosophers. The capacity to sense and connect with this deeper frequency exists inside every human being. The problem is not that the signal is absent. The problem is that most people have simply forgotten how to tune into it. From an early age, we are trained to rely almost entirely on analytical thinking. We learn to measure success through visible achievements, numbers, recognition, and external validation. We are taught how to solve problems, how to compete, how to plan, how to analyze every possible outcome. These abilities are valuable, but when they become the only language we use to navigate life, something important is lost. The deeper layers of awareness begin to fade into the background, drowned out by the constant noise of mental activity. Over time, many people begin to live almost entirely inside their thoughts. The mind becomes busy, restless, always searching for the next solution or the next problem to solve. Even during moments of rest, the thinking does not stop. Plans, worries, memories, and expectations keep circulating endlessly. In this state, the inner signal that connects us to deeper intelligence becomes very difficult to perceive. It is still there, always present, but it exists in a quieter band of awareness. To sense it requires something that modern life rarely encourages: stillness, not forced silence, but a natural settling of the mind and body that allows deeper perception to rise. Sometimes life itself creates the conditions for this awakening. A period of exhaustion, a personnel crisis, or a deep sense of dissatisfaction can push someone to question the direction they have been following. They may begin asking themselves questions they never asked before. Why does success not always bring fulfillment? Why do achievements sometimes feel empty? Why does the mind remain anxious even when things seem to be going well? These questions are not signs of weakness. In many ways, they are the beginning of a profound transformation. They signal that the person is starting to look beyond the surface of experience. They are beginning to search for a deeper alignment between who they are and how they are living. The truth is that human beings are not designed to function only through constant mental effort. The brain is powerful, but it was never meant to operate in isolation from the rest of our inner system. Beneath the surface of conscious thinking, there exists a much larger field of awareness that includes emotion, intuition, bodily intelligence, and subtle energetic processes that modern science is only beginning to understand. When these layers operate together, a remarkable form of coherence appears. Thoughts become clearer, emotions stabilize, and actions begin to flow with a sense of natural timing. This state does not feel forced. It feels like alignment. Many people describe the first moments of this alignment as a kind of remembering. It is not like learning something completely new. Instead, it feels as if the mind and body are rediscovering a rhythm that has always existed beneath the surface. Imagine listening to music where one instrument is slightly out of tune. The melody still exists, but it sounds strained and uncomfortable. Now, imagine that instrument slowly tuning itself until it matches the rest of the orchestra. Suddenly, the music becomes harmonious. The same notes are being played, yet the entire experience feels different. This is similar to what happens when a human being begins to reconnect with the deeper signal of life. In that moment, a person may notice subtle changes. Their breathing becomes slower and more natural. Their thoughts lose their frantic pace. The body releases tension that it has been carrying for years. A sense of quiet confidence begins to replace the need to control every outcome. Instead of constantly chasing clarity through analysis, clarity begins to appear from within. Ideas emerge more naturally. Creativity expands. Even relationships can shift, because the person is no longer interacting from fear or tension, but from a grounded center. This audiobook begins with a simple but powerful idea. Human beings are capable of tuning themselves to a deeper frequency of awareness, one that connects mind, heart, body, and the natural rhythms of the world. This frequency has often been described as divine, not because it belongs to a specific religion, but because it reflects the underlying intelligence that shapes life itself. When a person becomes aligned with this frequency, transformation does not always require force or struggle. Many changes begin to unfold naturally as internal resistance dissolves. You do not need to abandon logic to explore this possibility. In fact, logic becomes clearer when it is supported by deeper awareness. What is required is simply a willingness to observe your own inner state with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of assuming that confusion or stress means something is wrong with you, consider the possibility that your internal system may simply be out of sync. Just as a musical instrument requires tuning, the human mind and nervous system sometimes need recalibration. Once that process begins, the signal that once felt distant can become surprisingly clear. The journey you are about to experience is not about becoming someone entirely new. It is about rediscovering the deeper coherence that already exists within you. Beneath the noise of daily life, there is a quiet intelligence guiding every heartbeat, every breath, every subtle shift of awareness. When you learn how to listen again, the distance between you and that intelligence begins to disappear. What once felt like searching may start to feel like returning to a deeper rhythm of being, returning to a sense of clarity that has been waiting patiently beneath the surface of your thoughts. For most of our lives, we are taught to think of the brain as a machine for thinking, a biological computer that analyzes information, solves problems, and stores memories. We learn that the brain controls the body, organizes our actions, and processes everything we experience through logic and language. While this understanding is not wrong, it is incomplete. The brain is not only a center for thought, it is also an electrical and energetic system, constantly producing rhythmic patterns of activity. Every thought, every emotion, every memory, and every perception is accompanied by subtle electrical impulses moving through networks of neurons. These impulses create waves, patterns of vibration that can be measured, observed, and studied. In other words, the brain does not only think, it vibrates. At any given moment, billions of neurons are communicating with each other through electrical signals. When these signals synchronize across different regions of the brain, they create measurable frequencies known as brainwaves. Scientists have been studying these patterns for decades using electroencephalography, or EEG, technology, which allows researchers to observe how different mental states correspond to different rhythms of neural activity. What they discovered is remarkable. The brain does not operate at a single fixed speed. Instead, it shifts between multiple frequencies depending on our state of awareness, our emotional condition, and our level of focus or relaxation. When a person is fully alert and actively engaged in problem solving, the brain tends to produce faster frequencies known as beta waves. This is the state most people spend the majority of their waking hours in. Beta waves are associated with concentration, logical thinking, planning, and analyzing information. They are extremely useful when we need to work, communicate, or navigate complex tasks. However, beta activity also increases during periods of stress, anxiety, and mental overload. When the mind becomes trapped in constant beta activity, thoughts can start to feel chaotic and exhausting. The mind jumps rapidly from one concern to another, always searching for answers but rarely finding a sense of calm. As the brain begins to slow down, a different pattern emerges known as alpha waves. Alpha frequencies appear when the mind becomes relaxed yet still aware. This is the state people often enter during light meditation, creative reflection, or moments of quiet focus. Many artists, musicians, and athletes experience alpha states when they describe being in the zone, a condition where thinking becomes effortless and actions flow naturally without overanalysis. In alpha, the brain is still active, but the tension that usually accompanies intense thinking begins to dissolve. Deeper still lies the theta state, a slower rhythm associated with profound relaxation and inward awareness. Theta waves often appear during deep meditation, vivid imagination, and the early stages of sleep. In this state, the boundary between the conscious and subconscious mind becomes more flexible. Memories, insights, and creative ideas can surface more easily because the analytical filter of the mind softens. Many people report that their most intuitive realizations occur when they are drifting into sleep, waking from a dream, or resting in a deeply relaxed state where thoughts are no longer tightly controlled. Beyond these states is delta, the slowest brainwave frequency, most commonly associated with deep restorative sleep. During delta activity, the body undergoes powerful processes of healing and regeneration. Cells repair themselves, the immune system strengthens, and the brain clears metabolic waste accumulated during the day. Even though consciousness appears absent in delta sleep, the body is intensely active at a biological level, restoring the systems that allow us to function the following day. There is also a faster frequency known as gamma waves, which are often observed during moments of peak mental integration and heightened awareness. Gamma activity appears when different regions of the brain communicate rapidly and efficiently, allowing complex information to be processed as a unified experience. Some researchers have found unusually strong gamma activity in experienced meditators during states of deep compassion or expanded awareness, suggesting that the brain may enter highly coherent patterns when mind and emotion become aligned. What becomes clear through decades of research is that our experience of reality is closely tied to the rhythm of these internal vibrations. When the brain is dominated by fast, scattered activity, the world can feel overwhelming and fragmented. Thoughts race, attention splinters, and stress becomes the default response. But when the brain shifts into slower, more coherent patterns, perception changes. The same environment can suddenly feel calmer, clearer, and more manageable. Problems that once felt impossible begin to appear solvable. Creative solutions emerge more easily because the mind is no longer fighting against itself. This insight reveals something extremely important about human potential. Our mental state is not fixed. It is dynamic, constantly shifting according to the patterns of activity inside the brain. If these patterns can change naturally during sleep, relaxation, creativity, or meditation, then it becomes possible to intentionally guide the brain toward more balanced and coherent states. In other words, the way we experience life is not determined only by external circumstances. It is deeply influenced by the internal frequencies through which the brain processes those circumstances. Think of the brain as a sophisticated musical instrument. When it is tense and overstimulated, the notes it produces may sound sharp, chaotic, or discordant. But when the instrument becomes properly tuned, the same notes create harmony. The external world does not change, but the way it is interpreted changes dramatically. A situation that once triggered fear may now evoke curiosity. A challenge that once caused paralysis may now inspire creative action. The difference lies in the internal rhythm through which the brain is operating. This perspective also explains why moments of stillness can feel so powerful. When a person pauses long enough to breathe slowly, relax the body, and quiet the constant stream of thoughts, the brain naturally begins to transition from high-frequency beta activity towards slower alpha and theta rhythms. As this shift occurs, the nervous system moves away from the stress response and toward a state of balance. The heart rate slows, breathing becomes deeper, and the body releases chemical signals associated with safety and restoration. In this state, the mind becomes more receptive to insight, intuition, and emotional clarity. What makes this discovery even more fascinating is that the brain does not function in isolation from the rest of the body. The electrical patterns within the brain interact continuously with signals from the heart, the nervous system, and even the environment surrounding us. Our internal rhythms are constantly exchanging information with the larger world. When our internal state becomes coherent and balanced, we begin to perceive reality through a different lens, one that is less reactive and more aware. Understanding that the brain vibrates rather than simply thinks opens an entirely new way of approaching personal transformation. Instead of trying to force change through sheer willpower or endless mental effort, we can begin working with the natural rhythms of the brain itself. By learning how to guide these rhythms toward coherence, we allow clarity, creativity, and emotional stability to emerge more naturally. The brain becomes less like a battlefield of competing thoughts and more like a finely tuned instrument capable of perceiving deeper layers of experience. When this shift begins to happen, many people notice something subtle but profound. They no longer feel trapped inside their thoughts. Instead, they begin to observe them with greater distance and understanding. Awareness expands beyond the constant commentary of the mind. In that space, a new level of perception becomes possible, one that recognizes the brain not merely as a machine for thinking, but as a living field of vibration capable of tuning itself to deeper states of intelligence and harmony. The human brain is often described as the most complex structure in the known universe, yet one of its most fascinating features lies in a surprisingly simple design. The brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. At first glance, they appear almost identical, mirror images connected by a thick bundle of nerve fibers known as the corpus callosum. However, beneath this symmetry lies a remarkable specialization of function. Each hemisphere processes information in a slightly different way, contributing unique strengths to the way we think, perceive, and experience reality. For much of modern history, these two sides of the brain have often been described as opposites: the logical mind versus the intuitive mind, the analytical versus the creative, the structured versus the imaginative. While this description is somewhat simplified, it captures an important truth about how human cognition operates. The left hemisphere is generally associated with language, sequential reasoning, analytical thinking, and the ability to break complex problems into smaller parts. It excels at organizing information into clear categories and logical steps. When we solve mathematical problems, construct sentences, plan schedules, or analyze details, the left hemisphere plays a dominant role. It thrives on order, structure, and clarity. The right hemisphere, by contrast, processes information in a more holistic and intuitive way. It recognizes patterns, interprets emotions, perceives spatial relationships, and allows us to grasp the larger picture of a situation. When we appreciate music, imagine new ideas, read emotional cues in another person's face, or experience moments of creative inspiration, the right hemisphere becomes more active. Rather than dividing the world into pieces, it connects pieces into meaningful wholes. For many people, these two modes of processing rarely operate in perfect harmony. Daily life tends to favor the analytical style of the left hemisphere. Education systems reward logic, memorization, and structured problem-solving. Work environments often demand efficiency, planning, and rational decision-making. As a result, many individuals spend the majority of their waking hours relying heavily on left brain functions, while the intuitive capacities of the right hemisphere remain underutilized. This imbalance does not mean the right hemisphere stops working, but the communication between the two sides can become less coordinated. The brain becomes efficient at analysis yet less connected to intuition, creativity, and emotional depth. When communication between the hemispheres becomes fragmented, people may experience a subtle internal division. Thoughts and emotions feel disconnected from one another. The mind may logically understand what needs to be done, yet something deeper resists or hesitates. A person might analyze a situation endlessly but still feel uncertain about the right decision, or they may feel powerful intuition yet struggle to translate that intuition into clear action. This internal misalignment can create the sensation of being mentally busy but not truly clear, active but not fully aligned. Researchers studying brain function have observed that the most powerful cognitive states often appear when both hemispheres of the brain operate in synchronized patterns. This phenomenon is known as hemispheric synchronization, when the left and right sides of the brain begin communicating efficiently and rhythmically. The entire system becomes more coherent. Instead of competing with one another, logic and intuition begin to cooperate. Analytical thinking gains access to creative insight, while imagination becomes grounded in clarity and structure. The result is a mental state that feels both calm and highly focused at the same time. One of the early pioneers who explored this phenomenon in depth was Robert Monroe, founder of the Monroe Institute. Through extensive research involving sound frequencies and altered states of consciousness, Monroe and his colleagues discovered that specific auditory patterns could encourage the brain to synchronize activity across both hemispheres. These patterns, often delivered through technologies known as binaural beats or hemispheric entrainment audio, present slightly different tones to each ear. The brain naturally attempts to reconcile the difference between the two tones, and in doing so begins to align its electrical rhythms across both hemispheres. As this synchronization strengthens, many individuals report experiencing deep relaxation, heightened mental clarity, vivid imagery, and a powerful sense of internal unity. When hemispheric synchronization occurs, the mind often feels quieter yet more aware. Instead of a chaotic stream of competing thoughts, there is a sense of spaciousness and order. Ideas seem to arise naturally rather than being forced through effort. Complex problems may suddenly appear simple because the brain is able to view them from multiple perspectives simultaneously. The logical precision of the left hemisphere and the intuitive pattern recognition of the right hemisphere combine to create a more complete form of intelligence. Athletes frequently describe entering a state known as flow, where actions feel effortless and perfectly timed. In these moments, there is no inner conflict between thinking and doing. The body responds instantly to changing conditions while the mind remains calm and focused. Artists and musicians often report similar experiences during moments of deep creative immersion. They describe a feeling that ideas are not being forced but are simply arriving. Writers may notice that words seem to organize themselves onto the page without conscious struggle. Scientists and inventors throughout history have described sudden insights appearing after long periods of quiet reflection rather than intense analysis. These experiences share a common neurological foundation. The brain has entered a state where both hemispheres are working together in harmony. This synchronization does more than enhance creativity or performance. It can also influence emotional balance and perception. When the hemispheres are coordinated, emotional signals from the right hemisphere are processed with greater clarity by the analytical centers of the left hemisphere. Instead of suppressing emotion or becoming overwhelmed by it, the mind learns to integrate emotional information into thoughtful action. A person becomes capable of feeling deeply while remaining stable and aware. Stress responses decrease because the brain is no longer trapped in repetitive cycles of anxious thinking. The nervous system begins to operate with greater equilibrium. Another important effect of hemispheric synchronization is the strengthening of self-awareness. When communication across the brain becomes fluid, individuals often experience a heightened sense of presence. Attention becomes less scattered and more unified. Instead of constantly jumping between past regrets and future worries, the mind settles into the immediacy of the present moment. This state of awareness allows deeper insight into personal habits, emotional patterns, and unconscious beliefs that might otherwise remain hidden beneath mental noise. It is important to understand that hemispheric synchronization is not a rare or mystical event reserved for extraordinary individuals. The brain naturally moves toward this balanced state during activities that promote relaxation, focused attention, and emotional coherence. Meditation, deep breathing, rhythmic movement, music, and certain forms of sound stimulation can all encourage the brain to shift into synchronized patterns. Even simple moments of quiet reflection in nature can gently guide the nervous system toward this state. When the two hemispheres of the brain begin working together rather than competing for control, a profound transformation becomes possible. The mind stops feeling like a battlefield of conflicting thoughts and instead becomes a unified field of awareness. Decisions emerge with greater confidence because both analytical reasoning and intuitive insight are present. Creativity expands because imagination and structure are no longer separated. Emotional stability strengthens because feelings are understood rather than suppressed. In this balanced state, the brain functions more like a well-coordinated orchestra rather than a collection of isolated instruments. Each part contributes its unique voice, yet all follow the same rhythm. The result is coherence, a state in which thinking, feeling, and perceiving operate as a unified system. This harmony between the hemispheres is one of the keys to unlocking deeper levels of human potential, because when the brain becomes synchronized, the mind gains access to a broader range of intelligence than logic or intuition alone could ever provide. Sound has always held a mysterious power over the human mind. Long before modern science developed instruments capable of measuring brain activity, ancient cultures understood that rhythm and tone could influence consciousness. Drums were used in tribal ceremonies to guide people into trance-like states. Chants echoed through temples and monasteries to deepen meditation, and sacred music became a bridge between the ordinary mind and deeper levels of awareness. What these traditions sensed intuitively is now supported by modern neuroscience. The brain is highly responsive to sound, not only in the way it interprets music or language, but in the way rhythmic patterns can influence the electrical activity inside the mind itself. One of the most fascinating discoveries related to this phenomenon is known as binaural beats. Binaural beats occur when two slightly different sound frequencies are played separately into each ear. For example, if a tone of 200 Hz is played in the left ear and a tone of 207 Hz is played in the right ear, the brain does not hear two completely separate sounds. Instead, it perceives a third rhythmic pulse created by the difference between the two frequencies. In this case, the brain detects a beat at 7 Hz. What makes this phenomenon remarkable is that the brain begins to subtly synchronize its own electrical activity with this perceived rhythm. This process is known as brainwave entrainment, and it demonstrates how external sound patterns can influence the internal frequencies of the mind. To understand why this matters, we must return to the concept of brainwave states. As discussed earlier, the brain operates across several frequency ranges, depending on our mental and emotional condition. When we are fully alert and actively engaged in analytical thinking, the brain produces faster beta waves. This is the state associated with problem solving, conversation, planning, and decision-making. However, beta activity also rises during periods of stress and mental overload. Many people spend so much time in this state that their nervous system rarely experiences deep relaxation during waking hours. The result is a constant sense of mental pressure, as if the mind is always running but never truly resting. When the brain begins to slow down slightly, it enters the alpha state. Alpha waves typically occur between 8 and 12 Hz and are associated with calm focus and relaxed awareness. In this state, the mind becomes quieter while still remaining alert. Alpha is often described as the gateway between conscious thought and the deeper layers of the subconscious mind. It is the state many people enter during meditation, gentle reflection, or creative visualization. Athletes frequently experience alpha when they are completely absorbed in a task, yet feel relaxed and confident at the same time. Artists often describe their most creative moments as occurring when the mind shifts into this calm yet highly aware condition. Moving deeper still, we encounter theta waves, which range roughly between 4 and 8 Hz. Theta is associated with profound relaxation, dreamlike imagery, and access to subconscious processes. This state commonly appears during the early stages of sleep, deep meditation, and moments of vivid imagination. In theta, the analytical barrier of the mind becomes softer, allowing memories, emotions, and creative insights to rise more easily to the surface. Many people report experiencing powerful intuitive realizations while in theta states because the mind is no longer tightly controlled by rational analysis. Below theta lies delta, the slowest of the brainwave patterns. Delta waves are typically present during deep, dreamless sleep and are essential for physical restoration. During delta activity, the body repairs tissues, strengthens the immune system, and restores energy at the cellular level. Although we are usually unconscious during delta sleep, the brain is performing some of its most important maintenance processes. There is also a high-frequency state known as gamma, often observed during moments of intense concentration, learning, and integrated perception. Gamma waves appear when different regions of the brain communicate rapidly and efficiently with one another. Some studies suggest that experienced meditators can enter strong gamma activity during states of deep compassion or expanded awareness, indicating a high level of coherence within the brain. The significance of binaural beats lies in their ability to gently guide the brain toward these different states. By presenting carefully chosen frequency differences between the ears, binaural audio can encourage the brain to shift from fast beta activity towards slower alpha or theta rhythms. This process does not force the brain to change, but rather invites it to follow a pattern that naturally promotes relaxation and balance. When listened to through headphones in a quiet environment, many people notice that their breathing slows, their muscles relax, and their thoughts become less chaotic. Over time, the brain becomes more familiar with these calmer frequencies, making it easier to enter them even without external audio. One reason binaural beats are so effective is because they work with the brain's natural tendency toward synchronization. Neural networks constantly seek patterns and rhythms. When a consistent auditory signal is introduced, the brain often aligns its internal oscillations with that signal. This alignment can create a smoother transition between different brainwave states, helping individuals access levels of relaxation or focus that might otherwise require years of meditation practice. Beyond relaxation, many people use binaural audio to support activities such as studying, creative thinking, or emotional healing. Alpha frequencies can help maintain calm concentration during work or learning, while theta frequencies may assist with deep meditation and introspective exploration. Some audio programs even combine frequencies to encourage hemispheric synchronization, allowing both sides of the brain to operate more harmoniously. It is important to understand that binaural beats are not magic, and they do not replace genuine inner awareness. They are simply tools, gentle guides that help the brain rediscover rhythms it already knows how to produce. The true transformation occurs when individuals combine these tools with conscious practices such as mindful breathing, meditation, and emotional awareness. In that combination, the brain gradually learns to shift its own frequencies more naturally, creating states of coherence that extend beyond the listening session. What makes this technology particularly interesting is that it highlights a deeper truth about the human mind. Our consciousness is not fixed. It is fluid, capable of moving through a wide spectrum of states depending on internal and external influences. By understanding how sound interacts with brainwave activity, we begin to realize that our mental state is not simply something that happens to us. It is something that can be gently shaped through rhythm, attention, and intention. When the brain begins to explore these slower and more coherent frequencies, many people notice subtle changes in how they experience life. Stressful situations may feel less overwhelming. Thoughts become clearer and more organized. Emotional reactions soften because the nervous system is no longer locked in constant alert mode. Creativity begins to flow more freely, and intuition often becomes easier to recognize. These shifts are not sudden miracles, but gradual adjustments in the rhythm of the mind. In essence, binaural beats remind us that the brain is not merely a thinking machine, but a living system of vibration that can learn new patterns of harmony. Just as music can change our mood or guide our emotions, carefully structured sound can influence the deeper rhythms of awareness itself. When used with intention, this simple principle becomes a powerful doorway into calmer, clearer states of consciousness where the mind and body begin to move together in a more balanced and coherent way. Between the active thinking mind and the deep silence of sleep, there exists a subtle doorway that many people pass through every day without noticing. This doorway lies in the transition between the alpha and theta brainwave states. It is a delicate bridge where the mind becomes calm yet highly receptive, where awareness remains present but the rigid control of analytical thinking begins to soften. In this state, the brain is neither fully alert in the intense sense of problem-solving nor fully unconscious as it is in deep sleep. Instead, it occupies a unique middle ground where perception becomes more fluid, imagination more vivid, and intuition more accessible. Many researchers and meditation practitioners refer to this region as the alpha-theta bridge because it represents the threshold where the conscious mind and the subconscious mind begin to communicate more openly. When the brain enters the alpha state, the body typically becomes relaxed while awareness remains clear. Breathing slows, muscles release tension, and the mind experiences a gentle quieting of internal chatter. Thoughts may still appear, but they lose the urgent pressure that characterizes the fast-paced beta state. In alpha, the mind becomes more spacious, capable of observing ideas without becoming overwhelmed by them. This is why alpha is often associated with creativity and calm concentration. However, when the brain drifts slightly deeper into the theta range, something even more interesting begins to happen. The boundaries between deliberate thinking and subconscious processing start to blur. Images, emotions, memories, and intuitive impressions can surface more easily because the analytical gatekeeper of the mind is no longer filtering every experience with strict logic. Many people encounter the alpha-theta bridge naturally in 2 moments of the day, just before falling asleep and just after waking up. During these brief periods, the brain transitions between waking consciousness and the dream state. The mind becomes soft and receptive, often producing vivid imagery or spontaneous insights. You may have experienced moments where a creative idea suddenly appeared while you were lying in bed or drifting between sleep and wakefulness. That is the alpha-theta bridge in action. The mind has relaxed enough to access deeper layers of awareness, yet it is still awake enough to notice what arises from those layers. This state has fascinated scientists and spiritual teachers alike because it appears to be one of the most fertile conditions for learning, emotional integration, and personal transformation. When the brain is operating within this range, the nervous system enters a state of balance. The body shifts away from the fight or flight response and moves toward what is often called the rest and repair mode. Stress hormones begin to decrease while the brain releases chemicals associated with relaxation and well-being. In this environment, the mind becomes more adaptable and open to new patterns of thought. One of the most important aspects of the alpha-theta bridge is its influence on the subconscious mind. The subconscious contains many of the beliefs, emotional associations, and behavioral patterns that shape our daily lives. These patterns often develop through repeated experiences over many years, becoming automatic responses that operate beneath conscious awareness. When we attempt to change these patterns purely through conscious effort, we sometimes encounter resistance. The analytical mind may understand the change intellectually, yet the deeper emotional programming remains unchanged. The alpha-theta state offers a unique opportunity to communicate with the subconscious more directly because the mental filters that normally guard it become less rigid. In this receptive condition, visualization, attention, and emotional awareness become particularly powerful. When a person imagines a desired outcome while feeling calm and emotionally aligned, the brain begins to treat that image as a meaningful experience rather than a distant possibility. Neural pathways associated with the imagined event start to strengthen, making the idea feel more familiar and achievable. Over time, repeated experiences in the alpha-theta state can gradually reshape internal beliefs, allowing new patterns of behavior to emerge more naturally. Another remarkable feature of this state is the heightened sensitivity to subtle information. Because the analytical mind relaxes its constant evaluation of every thought, intuitive signals that might normally be dismissed can become clearer. Intuition is not mysterious in the supernatural sense. It is simply the brain's ability to recognize patterns and connections that are too complex for linear reasoning alone. When the mind becomes quiet enough to listen, these patterns can reveal themselves as sudden insights or feelings of inner knowing. Creative individuals often rely on this state without realizing it. Writers, inventors, and artists frequently describe moments where ideas seem to appear fully formed, as if emerging from somewhere beyond conscious effort. In reality, the brain has entered a rhythm where different networks are communicating freely, allowing imagination and logic to interact without interference. The alpha-theta bridge allows the mind to explore possibilities without the immediate judgment that often shuts down creative thinking. Accessing this state intentionally does not require extraordinary abilities. It simply requires learning how to guide the nervous system toward relaxation while maintaining gentle awareness. Practices such as slow breathing, meditation, listening to rhythmic sounds, or visualizing calming environments can all encourage the brain to move toward alpha and theta frequencies. With regular practice, the mind becomes more familiar with this rhythm, making it easier to enter the state whenever needed. When the brain learns to rest within the alpha-theta bridge, many people notice a profound shift in their daily experience. Situations that once triggered automatic stress responses begin to feel less overwhelming. Emotional reactions become easier to observe rather than immediately acting upon them. Decision-making becomes clearer because intuition and logic are no longer competing for control. The mind develops a sense of internal harmony that influences every aspect of perception. Ultimately, the alpha-theta bridge represents more than just a neurological curiosity. It is a gateway into deeper awareness of how the mind truly functions. By understanding and exploring this state, we begin to realize that consciousness is not limited to the constant activity of thought. Beneath the surface of the thinking mind lies a vast field of intelligence that communicates through images, feelings, and quiet insights. When we learn to rest within this field, the boundary between effort and flow begins to dissolve. Ideas arrive more easily. Emotional patterns begin to reorganize themselves, and life starts to feel less like a struggle against circumstances and more like a dialogue with deeper layers of awareness. This bridge between alpha and theta reminds us that transformation often occurs not through force but through alignment. When the mind becomes calm enough to listen and open enough to receive, the deeper intelligence within us begins to guide the process of change. The brain shifts from resistance to receptivity, from tension to harmony, allowing new possibilities to emerge from the quiet spaces where the conscious and subconscious meet. Long before modern technology began measuring the invisible forces surrounding our planet, human beings sensed that the Earth itself carried a rhythm. Ancient cultures often spoke about the pulse of nature, the living heartbeat of the world that could be felt through silence, meditation, or deep connection with the natural environment. For centuries, these ideas were treated mainly as poetic metaphors or spiritual observations. However, in the middle of the 20th century, scientists discovered something that gave these ancient intuitions a surprising scientific reference. In 1952, the German physicist Winfried Otto Schumann identified a natural electromagnetic resonance generated between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere that surrounds our planet. Within this vast atmospheric cavity, electromagnetic waves continuously bounce back and forth, creating a standing resonance at a frequency close to 7.83 Hz. This phenomenon is now known as the Schumann resonance, and it is often described as the natural background frequency of the Earth. What makes this discovery so fascinating is how closely this frequency overlaps with the range of human brain activity associated with deep relaxation and inner awareness. As discussed earlier, the alpha and theta brainwave states occupy a range between roughly 4 and 12 Hz, with the transitional alpha-theta bridge often appearing near 7 or 8 Hz. This means that when the brain enters a deeply relaxed yet aware condition, its electrical rhythms move into a range remarkably similar to the natural electromagnetic resonance of the planet itself. While this does not imply that the brain literally locks onto the Earth like a radio receiver, it does suggest that human physiology and planetary rhythms operate within compatible energetic patterns. This idea has inspired many researchers and thinkers to explore whether the human nervous system may be more deeply connected to the natural environment than we typically realize. Throughout most of human history, people lived in close contact with nature. Daily life unfolded under open skies, in forests, deserts, mountains, and fields. The rhythms of daylight and darkness guided sleep cycles, seasonal changes influenced activity, and the physical ground itself provided constant electrical contact with the body. In such conditions, the human nervous system evolved in continuous interaction with the electromagnetic and biological patterns of the Earth. Only in the relatively recent past have large numbers of people begun spending most of their time inside artificial environments, surrounded by electronic signals and insulated from direct contact with the natural world. Some researchers have proposed that reconnecting with natural rhythms may help restore balance within the nervous system. One example often discussed is the practice known as grounding or earthing. This involves direct physical contact with the earth, such as walking barefoot on grass, sand, or soil. The surface of the earth carries a subtle electrical charge, and when the body makes direct contact, electrons can move between the ground and the skin. Several studies suggest that this exchange may help regulate inflammation, reduce stress, and stabilize certain physiological processes within the body. While the science in this area is still developing, many people report feeling noticeably calmer and more centered after spending time in direct contact with natural environments. The connection between the Schumann resonance and human consciousness becomes particularly intriguing when we consider the alpha-theta brain state. When the brain slows into this calm and receptive frequency range, the nervous system shifts away from constant alertness and toward a balanced state of awareness. In this condition, breathing becomes deeper, the heart rhythm stabilizes, and the body releases chemical signals associated with relaxation and healing. Many meditation practices aim precisely at guiding the brain toward this frequency range because it allows the mind to remain aware while becoming deeply peaceful. Imagine for a moment what it means that the brain naturally enters a rhythm close to the Earth's background frequency during states of meditation, reflection, or deep relaxation. It suggests that when the mind becomes quiet enough, it may begin operating within a rhythm that is not only internally coherent, but also resonant with the broader environment in which life evolved. In such moments, people often describe a powerful sense of connection with nature or with life itself. They feel less separate from their surroundings and more integrated with the world around them. This feeling does not necessarily come from a specific belief system, but from a direct experience of harmony between inner awareness and external reality. This sense of resonance may also explain why natural environments often have a calming effect on the mind. When people spend time in forests, near oceans, or under open skies, the brain frequently shifts towards slower wave patterns associated with relaxation and contemplation. The absence of constant noise and artificial stimulation allows the nervous system to settle into its natural rhythms. Many individuals report that their thoughts become clearer and their emotions more balanced after spending time in nature. It is as if the mind remembers a deeper tempo of living that modern life sometimes obscures. Understanding the concept of 7.83 Hz does not mean we must treat it as a mystical number with magical powers. Instead, it can be viewed as a symbol of the broader relationship between human consciousness and the natural world. Our bodies and brains did not develop in isolation. They evolved within a planetary system full of rhythms, cycles, and energetic patterns. When we align our internal state with calm and coherent frequencies, the entire nervous system begins to operate more smoothly. In this sense, the idea of synchronizing with the Earth is less about tuning into a single frequency and more about restoring the natural balance that our physiology already understands. Many practices that promote well-being indirectly support this alignment. Slow breathing exercises help regulate the nervous system and encourage alpha brainwave activity. Meditation quiets the analytical mind and allows deeper rhythms to emerge. Gentle movement such as walking or yoga synchronizes breath and body awareness. Time spent outdoors reconnects us with the environmental signals that shaped human biology for thousands of years. All of these activities help the brain settle into patterns that resemble the calm and stable frequencies associated with the alpha-theta bridge. When a person regularly enters these states of calm coherence, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind stops reacting automatically to every stimulus. Instead, awareness expands, allowing space between thought and response. In that space, clarity grows. Emotions become easier to understand rather than overwhelming to experience. Creativity begins to flow more naturally because the brain is no longer trapped in cycles of stress-driven thinking. The individual feels grounded, present, and connected to something larger than the constant activity of the mind. The concept of the Schumann resonance therefore serves as a reminder that human beings are not separate from the planet they inhabit. The rhythms of the earth, the patterns of nature, and the electrical activity of the human brain all exist within a shared field of physical reality. When we slow down enough to allow our internal rhythms to become calm and coherent, we may find that our awareness naturally aligns with the deeper pulse of life itself. In that alignment, the mind experiences a sense of stability and clarity that cannot be forced through effort alone. It emerges through resonance, through the quiet synchronization between the human nervous system and the subtle rhythms of the world that surrounds us. For most of modern history, people have been taught to believe that the brain is the center of intelligence and that the heart is only a mechanical pump responsible for circulating blood through the body. While the heart certainly performs this essential physical function, recent scientific discoveries suggest that its role may be far more complex than once believed. The heart does not merely respond to commands from the brain. It communicates with the brain continuously through a sophisticated network of neural signals, hormones, pressure waves, and electromagnetic fields. In many ways, the heart and the brain function as a dynamic partnership, constantly exchanging information that shapes how we think, feel, and respond to the world around us. Within the heart exists a network of specialized neurons, often referred to as the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. This network contains tens of thousands of neurons capable of sensing, processing, and sending signals independently of the brain. These signals travel through the vagus nerve and other pathways, influencing emotional regulation, attention, and cognitive clarity. In other words, the heart is not only responding to the brain, it is actively participating in the conversation that determines our internal state. This continuous dialogue forms what many researchers now describe as the heart-brain connection. One of the most fascinating aspects of this connection involves the electromagnetic field produced by the heart. Every time the heart beats, it generates an electrical signal that spreads throughout the body. This signal is strong enough to create a measurable electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond the physical body. Studies have shown that this field is significantly more powerful than the electromagnetic field generated by the brain. While the brain's signals are subtle and localized, the heart's field is broad and rhythmic, influencing not only the internal environment of the body, but also the energetic interactions between individuals. When the heart rhythm becomes smooth and balanced, the entire nervous system begins to shift toward coherence. This state is often called heart-brain coherence, a condition in which the signals traveling between the heart and brain become synchronized. In this coherent state, breathing becomes steady, emotional responses stabilize, and mental clarity improves. Rather than operating in conflict, emotional and cognitive processes begin to support each other. Decisions feel more natural, intuition becomes easier to trust, and stress reactions lose much of their intensity. The opposite of this state occurs when the signals between the heart and brain become chaotic or fragmented. When a person experiences fear, anger, or chronic stress, the heart rhythm becomes irregular and erratic. These patterns send signals to the brain that reinforce emotional tension and mental agitation. The mind may begin racing with repetitive thoughts, and the body remains locked in a defensive state. In this condition, the brain struggles to access higher levels of reasoning and creativity because its resources are focused primarily on managing perceived threats. This interaction between heart rhythm and mental state explains why emotions have such a powerful influence on perception. When the heart is in a coherent rhythm, the brain receives signals associated with safety and stability. These signals allow the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for reasoning and self-regulation, to function more effectively. As a result, individuals are able to think clearly, even in challenging situations. When the heart rhythm becomes chaotic, however, the brain interprets the signals as indicators of danger. The nervous system shifts into survival mode, reducing the capacity for calm reflection and increasing reactive behavior. Understanding this relationship reveals something extremely important about inner alignment. True mental clarity does not come only from controlling thoughts through effort or discipline. It also depends on the emotional signals generated by the heart. When emotional energy and cognitive processes move in the same direction, the entire system becomes unified. Thoughts, feelings, and actions begin to operate as parts of a single coherent process, rather than competing forces pulling the mind in different directions. This unity between heart and mind has been recognized in spiritual traditions long before it was studied scientifically. Ancient teachings often describe the heart as a center of wisdom rather than merely a physical organ. Phrases such as "follow your heart" or "listen to the wisdom of the heart" appear across many cultures and philosophical systems. While these expressions were once interpreted metaphorically, modern research into heart-brain communication suggests that they may contain a deeper physiological truth. The heart does play an essential role in guiding perception and emotional intelligence. One practical way to cultivate heart-brain coherence is through intentional breathing combined with positive emotional focus. When a person breathes slowly and rhythmically while directing attention toward feelings of gratitude, appreciation, or compassion, the heart rhythm begins to stabilize into a smooth pattern. This pattern sends coherent signals to the brain, helping the nervous system move into a balanced state. Within a few minutes, many people notice that their thoughts become calmer and their emotional reactions soften. Problems that once seemed overwhelming may suddenly appear manageable because the brain is receiving signals of stability from the heart. Over time, practicing this form of emotional regulation strengthens the communication pathways between the heart and brain. The nervous system learns to return more easily to coherent states even during stressful circumstances. Instead of reacting automatically to challenges, the mind develops a pause, a moment of awareness that allows more thoughtful responses. This pause can transform the way a person experiences life because it creates space between stimulus and reaction. When heart and mind operate together in harmony, a person often experiences a profound sense of inner alignment. Decisions feel guided rather than forced because logic and intuition are cooperating. Emotional intelligence increases because feelings are processed clearly rather than suppressed or overwhelming. Relationships become more authentic because communication arises from a place of genuine presence rather than defensive patterns. Even physical health can improve as the body spends more time in a balanced physiological state. This integration of heart and mind forms a bridge between analytical intelligence and intuitive awareness. The brain provides structure, language, and logical understanding, while the heart contributes emotional depth, empathy, and a sense of connection. When these two systems become synchronized, the human experience becomes richer and more stable. Instead of being driven entirely by mental analysis or emotional impulses, individuals learn to move through life, guided by a unified internal compass. Ultimately, the heart-mind connection reminds us that true coherence is not simply a mental achievement. It is a whole system experience involving the brain, the heart, the nervous system, and the emotional landscape within us. When these elements work together, rather than against each other, the mind becomes clearer, the body more relaxed, and awareness more expansive. In that state, the bridge between thought and feeling becomes a pathway toward deeper understanding, allowing human consciousness to function with a balance that supports both wisdom and compassion. There are moments in life when a person clearly feels the desire to move forward, to change something, to follow a calling that seems deeply meaningful. Yet at the same time, something inside holds them back. One part of the mind says yes, while another part quietly whispers no. The heart senses a direction that feels alive and authentic, but the thinking mind begins listing every possible risk, every possible failure, every reason why the step should not be taken. This internal tension is one of the most common yet least understood experiences in human life. Many people interpret it as weakness, lack of discipline, or fear of success. In reality, it is often the result of a deeper conflict between two powerful systems within the human being: the emotional intelligence of the heart and the analytical caution of the mind. The heart operates through feeling, intuition, and resonance. It responds quickly to what feels meaningful, inspiring, or aligned with a person's deeper values. The heart does not analyze every detail of a situation. Instead, it senses patterns and emotional truth almost instantly. This is why someone may feel drawn to a certain path even when they cannot logically explain why. The heart recognizes authenticity through sensation rather than calculation. When people say they feel something in their heart, they are often describing this immediate form of intuitive perception. The mind, however, functions very differently. Its role is to evaluate possibilities, identify risks, and maintain stability. The analytical brain evolved partly to protect us from danger by predicting negative outcomes and planning strategies to avoid them. From an evolutionary perspective, this function was essential for survival. Early humans who constantly scanned their environment for threats were more likely to stay alive than those who acted purely on impulse. As a result, the brain developed powerful mechanisms for caution, anticipation, and control. In the modern world, these same protective mechanisms can become overactive. The brain continues to scan for threats even when the dangers are no longer physical but psychological or social. Instead of worrying about predators or natural hazards, the mind begins worrying about rejection, embarrassment, financial loss, or failure. Every time a new opportunity appears, the analytical mind immediately starts calculating potential risks. While this evaluation can sometimes be helpful, it can also create paralysis when the mind becomes trapped in endless scenarios of what might go wrong. This is where the conflict between heart and mind often begins. The heart senses a possibility that feels meaningful and exciting. It may be a new career direction, a creative project, a relationship, or a personal transformation that promises deeper fulfillment. Yet the mind quickly generates a series of protective arguments. What if it does not work? What if people judge you? What if you lose stability? What if the effort fails and you regret the decision? Each of these questions may appear rational, but when they accumulate, they can overwhelm the initial sense of inspiration coming from the heart. Over time, many individuals begin trusting the cautious voice of the mind more than the intuitive guidance of the heart. This pattern is reinforced by cultural expectations that emphasize certainty and predictability. Society often rewards safe decisions and discourages risks that do not guarantee immediate results. As a result, people learn to suppress intuitive impulses that cannot be fully justified through logic. The heart becomes quieter while the mind becomes louder, constantly attempting to control every outcome before action is taken. The problem with this imbalance is that the analytical mind is not designed to understand every dimension of human experience. Logic is powerful when dealing with measurable problems, but many of life's most meaningful choices cannot be calculated with complete certainty. Relationships, creativity, purpose, and personal growth often require a willingness to move forward without absolute guarantees. When the mind demands perfect clarity before action, progress can stall indefinitely. The person remains stuck between the desire to move forward and the fear of making the wrong decision. This internal stalemate creates the sensation of being trapped. Energy builds within the heart as longing or inspiration, yet that energy has no pathway for expression because the mind blocks movement with endless analysis. The result can appear as procrastination, hesitation, or chronic overthinking. People may spend months or even years thinking about changes they want to make while never taking the first step. Each new idea triggers excitement, followed by immediate doubt. Eventually, the excitement fades and the mind concludes that the idea was unrealistic from the beginning. Another layer of this conflict involves subconscious beliefs formed through past experiences. If a person has previously faced criticism, rejection, or disappointment when pursuing something meaningful, the brain records those events as warnings. Later, when a similar opportunity appears, the subconscious memory activates automatically. The mind may not consciously remember the original event, but the emotional pattern remains. The analytical brain interprets the feeling of uncertainty as evidence that the situation is unsafe, even when the actual circumstances are different. Because of these patterns, many individuals unknowingly live within a cycle of internal resistance. The heart continues to generate impulses toward growth and fulfillment, but the mind repeatedly intervenes to preserve familiarity. This cycle can create a deep sense of frustration because the person feels that their life is not fully aligned with their inner aspirations. They may succeed externally yet still feel disconnected from a deeper sense of purpose. Breaking this cycle does not require silencing the mind or ignoring its protective instincts. The mind plays an important role in planning and decision-making. The key lies in creating communication rather than conflict between the two systems. When the heart provides direction and the mind offers practical support, the internal struggle begins to dissolve. The mind can evaluate risks without suppressing inspiration, and the heart can guide choices without dismissing necessary caution. One way to cultivate this cooperation is by first recognizing the difference between intuitive guidance and fear-based thinking. Intuition tends to feel calm and steady even when it suggests taking a bold step. Fear-based thinking, by contrast, often feels urgent and repetitive, cycling through worst-case scenarios without resolution. Learning to observe these internal signals helps individuals distinguish between genuine insight and protective anxiety. As awareness grows, the heart and mind gradually begin to synchronize. The mind learns that not every uncertain situation is dangerous, and the heart learns to communicate its guidance in ways the mind can understand. Instead of pulling in opposite directions, the two systems start working together toward a shared intention. In this alignment, the feeling of being stuck begins to dissolve. Movement becomes possible because inspiration and reasoning are no longer in conflict. When heart and mind unite, the individual experiences a sense of internal coherence. Decisions feel both emotionally meaningful and logically grounded. Action becomes easier because the internal resistance that once blocked progress has transformed into supportive energy. The person no longer feels divided between what they feel and what they think. Instead, they move forward with a quiet confidence that arises from the integration of both forms of intelligence. This harmony between heart and mind is one of the most powerful foundations for personal transformation. It allows individuals to pursue meaningful goals without abandoning rational awareness. More importantly, it restores the sense that life is guided by an inner compass rather than controlled entirely by fear or external expectations. When the heart and mind finally speak the same language, the path forward becomes clearer, and the energy once trapped in internal conflict becomes available for growth, creativity, and purposeful action. When the signals between the heart and the brain become aligned, a remarkable state begins to emerge within the human nervous system. Researchers often describe this state as heart coherence. In simple terms, heart coherence refers to a condition where the rhythm of the heart becomes smooth, steady, and harmonious, allowing the brain and body to function with greater clarity and balance. Instead of sending chaotic stress signals through the nervous system, the heart begins generating rhythmic patterns that support calm awareness and emotional stability. This state does not require extraordinary effort to achieve. In fact, it often arises naturally when the body relaxes, the breath slows, and the mind shifts away from constant tension. To understand heart coherence, it helps to look at the way the heart rhythm changes according to emotional states. When a person experiences frustration, fear, or anger, the rhythm of the heart becomes irregular. The time intervals between heartbeats vary unpredictably, creating a jagged pattern in the electrical signals traveling through the nervous system. This irregular rhythm sends messages to the brain that reinforce stress responses. The brain interprets these signals as evidence that the body is under threat, which triggers further tension, faster breathing, and increased mental agitation. In this cycle, the mind and body feed each other's stress. However, when a person experiences emotions such as appreciation, gratitude, compassion, or calm focus, the heart rhythm begins to organize into a smooth wave-like pattern. Instead of chaotic fluctuations, the intervals between heartbeats form a coherent rhythm. This coherent pattern sends stabilizing signals to the brain, allowing the nervous system to shift out of defensive mode and into a balanced state. When this happens, the brain becomes more capable of clear thinking, emotional regulation, and creative insight. The body releases fewer stress hormones, and the entire system begins to function more efficiently. The fascinating part of this process is that it can be influenced intentionally through simple breathing practices. The breath acts as a bridge between conscious awareness and automatic bodily functions. Unlike the heartbeat or digestion, breathing can be controlled voluntarily while still affecting the deeper systems of the nervous system. When a person slows their breathing and makes it steady and rhythmic, the heart naturally begins to follow that rhythm. As the heart rhythm stabilizes, the brain receives signals that the body is safe, allowing the entire system to move toward coherence. One of the most effective techniques for creating heart coherence is often called heart-focused breathing. The practice is simple yet powerful because it directly influences both physiology and attention. To begin the exercise, a person sits comfortably or stands in a relaxed position. The eyes may be gently closed to reduce external distraction. The first step is to bring awareness to the area around the heart. Imagining that the breath is flowing in and out through the center of the chest, this simple shift of attention helps redirect awareness away from the constant activity of the thinking mind. Next, the breathing pattern is slowed into a steady rhythm. A common method is to inhale slowly for about 5 or 6 seconds and then exhale for the same amount of time. The goal is not to force the breath but to allow it to move smoothly and naturally. As this rhythm continues, the body begins to relax. The muscles release tension, the shoulders drop, and the nervous system gradually shifts into a calmer state. Within a few minutes, the heart rhythm often begins to stabilize in response to the steady breathing pattern. Once the breathing becomes comfortable, another element is introduced: emotional focus. While continuing the slow, rhythmic breathing, the person brings to mind a feeling of appreciation or gratitude. This could be a memory of a meaningful moment, the presence of someone they care about, or simply a sense of appreciation for being alive. The key is to allow the feeling to arise gently rather than forcing it. Even a small sense of gratitude can begin influencing the heart rhythm. As the emotional focus combines with steady breathing, the heart rhythm becomes increasingly coherent. The body receives signals of safety and warmth, which further calms the nervous system. At the same time, the brain begins to function with greater clarity because it is no longer flooded with stress signals. Many people notice that their thoughts slow down during this process. Instead of racing through worries or plans, the mind becomes quiet and attentive. In this calm awareness, insights may appear naturally without effort. Practicing heart coherence regularly can gradually retrain the nervous system. Over time, the body becomes more familiar with the coherent rhythm and learns to return to it more easily, even during stressful situations. Instead of reacting immediately to challenges, the mind develops the ability to pause and respond thoughtfully. This pause is extremely valuable because it creates space between stimulus and reaction. In that space, individuals can choose their response rather than being driven by automatic emotional patterns. Another important benefit of heart coherence is the improvement of emotional resilience. When the nervous system spends more time in coherent states, the body becomes less reactive to sudden stress. Challenges that once triggered intense anxiety may now feel manageable because the internal system remains balanced. The heart continues sending stabilizing signals to the brain, even when external circumstances are uncertain. This stability allows people to think clearly and act with intention rather than panic. Heart coherence also enhances interpersonal connection, because the heart generates a measurable electromagnetic field that extends beyond the body. Coherent heart rhythms can influence the emotional environment around us. When someone enters a calm and balanced state, others often feel that stability intuitively. Conversations become smoother, empathy increases, and communication becomes more authentic. While these effects may seem subtle, they can significantly improve relationships and social interactions. Perhaps the most profound aspect of heart coherence is the sense of inner alignment it creates. When breathing, emotion, and attention move together in harmony, the individual experiences a state of unity within themselves. The mind no longer feels scattered between conflicting thoughts and emotions. Instead, awareness becomes centered and present. In this state, people often describe feeling grounded yet open, calm yet alert, peaceful yet capable of action. Heart coherence, therefore, represents more than a relaxation technique. It is a method of restoring the natural communication between the heart and the brain. Through simple practices such as rhythmic breathing and positive emotional focus, the nervous system can shift from fragmentation to harmony. As this harmony becomes more familiar, the individual begins to experience life from a place of internal stability rather than constant tension. Decisions become clearer, creativity flows more easily, and the sense of connection with oneself and others grows stronger. In this way, the simple act of breathing with awareness becomes a powerful gateway to deeper balance within the human system. One of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior operates beneath conscious awareness. It is the subconscious mind, a vast system responsible for storing beliefs, emotional memories, habits, and automatic responses developed over a lifetime. While the conscious mind may set goals, make plans, and attempt to change behaviors, The subconscious mind quietly determines what feels possible, safe, or believable. This is why many people struggle to change patterns even when they fully understand what they want. They may repeat positive affirmations, create new plans, or promise themselves that tomorrow will be different, yet something inside quietly resists the change. That resistance often comes from a protective mechanism within the mind, commonly described as the analytical gatekeeper. The analytical gatekeeper is a function of the conscious mind that filters incoming ideas before they reach the deeper layers of the subconscious. Its primary purpose is to protect the stability of existing beliefs. Every belief stored in the subconscious forms part of an internal model of reality, a framework the mind uses to predict outcomes and maintain psychological consistency. If a new idea enters that directly contradicts this framework, the analytical mind evaluates it and often rejects it before it can influence deeper patterns. This process happens automatically and usually without conscious awareness. To understand how this works, imagine someone who has spent many years believing they are not capable of success. Perhaps this belief formed early in life through repeated criticism or failure. Over time, the subconscious accepted this idea as a truth and built emotional patterns around it. Later in life, the person may consciously decide that they want to succeed and begin repeating affirmations such as, "I am successful," or "I am confident." On the surface, these statements appear positive and motivating. However, when the analytical mind compares them to the existing beliefs stored in the subconscious, it recognizes a conflict. Because the new statement feels inconsistent with past experience, the gatekeeper rejects it. Instead of accepting the affirmation, the mind quietly responds with doubt, saying internally that is not true. This internal contradiction explains why many attempts at personal change feel frustrating. The conscious mind tries to introduce new beliefs while the analytical gatekeeper defends the old ones. The more forcefully the conscious mind pushes, the stronger the subconscious resistance may become. The mind interprets the new belief as a threat to its established sense of stability, even if the old belief is limiting or harmful. In this way, the gatekeeper does not attempt to sabotage progress intentionally. Its role is simply to maintain continuity with what the subconscious already recognizes as familiar. The gatekeeper becomes especially active during waking states dominated by analytical thinking. When the brain operates primarily in the beta frequency range, the mind is highly alert, evaluating every idea through logic and comparison. This is extremely useful for solving problems or making decisions, but it also strengthens the barrier between conscious intention and subconscious programming. In this state, new beliefs struggle to reach the deeper levels of the mind because the analytical filter remains constantly active. However, there are moments when this gatekeeper becomes less dominant. When the brain shifts into slower alpha or theta frequencies, the analytical mind begins to relax. In these states, the boundary between conscious awareness and subconscious processing becomes more flexible. This is why many transformative practices such as meditation, deep relaxation, or guided visualization are often performed in calm environments where the mind can slow down. As the brain moves away from intense analytical activity, the gatekeeper loosens its control, allowing new ideas to pass more easily into the subconscious. Think of the analytical mind as a guard standing at the entrance of a vast library. This library represents the subconscious mind where all past experiences and beliefs are stored. During normal waking consciousness, the guard carefully examines every new piece of information before allowing it inside. If the information appears inconsistent with what is already stored, the guard rejects it. But when the mind becomes relaxed and open, the guard becomes less strict. In that moment, new ideas can quietly enter the library and begin influencing the collection of beliefs within. This is why emotional experience plays such an important role in personal transformation. The subconscious mind does not respond strongly to logic alone. It responds to feelings, imagery, and repetition. When a person visualizes a desired outcome while feeling genuine emotion, the subconscious interprets the experience as meaningful. Over time, repeated emotional experiences can gradually reshape existing beliefs because the mind begins to recognize the new pattern as familiar rather than threatening. For example, someone who has long believed they are not creative may slowly change that belief by repeatedly engaging in small creative activities that produce positive emotional experiences. Each successful moment creates a new memory that enters the subconscious. Eventually, the analytical gatekeeper stops rejecting the idea of creativity because the subconscious has gathered enough evidence to accept the new identity. The belief does not change instantly, but it evolves through repeated exposure to experiences that align with the new possibility. Another important factor in bypassing the gatekeeper is the use of what psychologists sometimes call bridge beliefs. These are ideas that sit between the old belief and the desired new belief, making the transition less threatening to the subconscious. Instead of jumping from "I am not capable" to "I am completely successful," a bridge belief might be "I am learning to improve" or "I am becoming more capable every day." Because these statements do not directly contradict the existing belief, the analytical mind is more likely to allow them through. Over time, these intermediate beliefs gradually reshape the subconscious framework. Understanding the role of the analytical gatekeeper changes the way we approach personal growth. Instead of fighting against subconscious resistance, we begin working with the natural processes of the mind. We recognize that lasting change occurs not through force, but through alignment between conscious intention and subconscious acceptance. Practices that calm the nervous system, reduce your mental tension, and create positive emotional experiences help open the pathway between these two layers of awareness. When the gatekeeper relaxes, new beliefs can enter the subconscious more naturally. These beliefs begin influencing perception, behavior, and emotional response from within. Gradually, the individual starts acting in ways that reflect the new identity without constant effort. What once required discipline begins to feel automatic because the subconscious has adopted the new pattern as part of its internal model of reality. The analytical gatekeeper therefore serves an important purpose. It protects the mind from sudden changes that could disrupt stability. Yet it also reminds us that meaningful transformation requires patience and understanding of the mind's deeper structure. By learning how this protective mechanism works, we gain the ability to communicate more effectively with the subconscious, allowing genuine change to occur not only in our thoughts, but in the very patterns that shape our experience of life. The subconscious mind operates according to principles that are very different from the logical thinking of the conscious mind. While the conscious mind understands language, analysis, and structured reasoning, the subconscious responds primarily to emotion, imagery, symbolism, and repetition. This difference explains why people often struggle when they attempt to change their behavior using logic alone. A person may intellectually understand that a habit is unhealthy or that a new mindset would improve their life. Yet the deeper patterns remain unchanged. The reason is simple. The subconscious does not communicate through the same language as analytical thought. It speaks through experience, feeling, and pattern. From the earliest moments of life, the subconscious mind begins absorbing information from the environment. Before children develop strong analytical thinking, they learn primarily through emotional impressions and sensory experience. Every interaction with parents, teachers, and peers creates emotional associations that shape how the mind interprets the world. If a child repeatedly experiences encouragement and support, the subconscious records a sense of safety and capability. If the child frequently experiences criticism or rejection, the subconscious may develop patterns of insecurity or self-doubt. These impressions are not stored as logical arguments. They are stored as emotional memories linked with images, sensation, and symbolic meaning. Because of this process, the subconscious becomes a powerful archive of learned experiences. It contains beliefs about identity, expectations about relationships, and automatic responses to stress or opportunity. Most of these patterns operate silently in the background of awareness. A person may not consciously remember the moment when a belief first formed, yet the emotional pattern continues influencing decisions years later. When a situation resembles a past experience, the subconscious activates the corresponding emotional response almost instantly. One of the most important characteristics of the subconscious is its reliance on imagery. The brain naturally thinks in pictures as well as words, and the subconscious responds strongly to visual impressions. When people imagine a vivid scene, their brain activates many of the same neural pathways that would respond to the real experience. For example, if someone vividly imagines walking through a forest, the brain areas associated with sensory perception may become active, even though the person remains physically still. This ability allows visualization to influence subconscious patterns because the mind interprets the imagined experience as meaningful input. Symbolism plays a similar role in the language of the subconscious. Throughout human history, symbols have been used to represent complex ideas that cannot easily be explained through words alone. Religious icons, cultural myths, and artistic imagery often communicate emotional meaning more powerfully than logical explanations. The subconscious understands these symbols because they connect with deep emotional associations formed through personal or cultural experience. When a symbol resonates with a person, it can evoke powerful feelings that influence perception and behavior. Emotion itself may be the most important component of subconscious communication. The subconscious mind responds strongly to emotional intensity because emotions signal that an experience is significant for survival or identity. Events accompanied by strong emotion tend to leave lasting impressions within memory. A joyful achievement may reinforce confidence, while a painful embarrassment may reinforce avoidance. The stronger the emotion attached to an experience, the more deeply the subconscious records the associated pattern. This is why emotional engagement is essential when attempting to introduce new beliefs or habits. Simply repeating a statement without feeling rarely influences the subconscious, because the mind does not interpret the statement as meaningful. However, when a thought is combined with genuine emotion, the subconscious recognizes it as important information. Over time, repeated emotional experiences can reshape the patterns stored within the mind. Repetition is another key element in the language of the subconscious. Patterns become established through repeated exposure rather than single events. When the same message or experience occurs frequently, the subconscious gradually accepts it as part of reality. This principle explains both the formation of limiting beliefs and the process of positive transformation. If someone repeatedly hears negative messages about their abilities, they may internalize those messages as truth. Conversely, if they consistently experience positive reinforcement combined with meaningful action, the subconscious begins updating its expectations. Because repetition is so powerful, many successful learning techniques rely on consistent practice over time. Musicians repeat scales until their movements become automatic. Athletes train specific motions until their bodies respond instinctively during competition. In the same way, the mind develops emotional and cognitive habits through repeated mental experiences. When a person consistently visualizes success while feeling calm and confident, the brain begins forming neural pathways that support that identity. Another important factor is timing. The subconscious becomes especially receptive during moments when the analytical mind is less active. These moments often occur during transitions between waking and sleep or during deep relaxation. When the brain shifts into slower alpha and theta frequencies, the mental filters that usually evaluate every idea begin to soften. In this receptive state, emotional imagery and symbolic experiences can reach the subconscious more directly. This is why practices such as meditation, guided visualization, and affirmations before sleep can be effective for influencing deeper beliefs. Understanding the language of the subconscious changes the way we approach personal growth. Instead of relying solely on logical arguments, we begin incorporating emotional awareness, visualization, and consistent repetition into the process of transformation. For example, if someone wishes to develop greater confidence, they might combine practical action with mental imagery of successful outcomes while cultivating feelings of calm assurance. Over time, the subconscious begins associating these emotions and images with the person's identity. It is also important to recognize that the subconscious cannot easily distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When the brain repeatedly experiences a clear mental image accompanied by authentic emotion, it begins forming neural pathways similar to those created by physical experience. This does not mean that imagination alone replaces action, but it does mean that mental rehearsal can prepare the mind and body for new behaviors. Gradually, the subconscious starts integrating these repeated emotional images into its internal model of reality. As this model changes, the person may notice shifts in their automatic reactions. Situations that once triggered doubt may now evoke curiosity or motivation. Opportunities that previously felt intimidating may begin to appear achievable. These changes often happen subtly because the subconscious operates beneath conscious awareness. Yet the impact on behavior can be profound. Ultimately, the language of the subconscious reminds us that transformation involves more than intellectual understanding. The mind must experience new patterns emotionally and symbolically before it accepts them as part of identity. By working with emotion, imagery, symbolism, and repetition, we learn to communicate with the deeper layers of consciousness that shape our perception of the world. When this communication becomes clear, the gap between conscious intention and subconscious belief begins to close, allowing the mind to move toward a more integrated and supportive pattern of awareness. One of the most common mistakes people make when attempting to change their mindset is trying to leap too far from their current beliefs to a completely opposite identity. A person who has spent many years believing they are not capable of success may suddenly attempt to convince themselves that they are powerful, wealthy, and unstoppable. While the intention is positive, the mind often rejects this extreme shift. The analytical gatekeeper immediately recognizes that the new belief feels unrealistic compared to past experiences. Instead of accepting the new statement, the mind quietly resists it, creating inner tension and doubt. This is where the concept of bridge beliefs becomes essential. Bridge beliefs act as stepping stones that gradually guide the subconscious from an old identity toward a new one without triggering defensive resistance. A bridge belief is a thought or statement that feels believable even if it does not yet represent the final desired identity. It sits between the old belief and the new belief, allowing the mind to move step by step rather than attempting an immediate transformation. For example, a person who believes "I am not successful" may struggle to accept the statement "I am completely successful and confident." However, they might find it easier to accept a statement such as "I am learning how to improve my abilities" or "I am becoming more capable every day." These intermediate beliefs do not directly contradict the person's past experience, so the analytical mind is more willing to allow them into the subconscious. Over time, repeated exposure to these bridge beliefs gradually reshapes the internal narrative. This gradual approach mirrors the way the brain naturally learns new patterns. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition and consistent experience rather than sudden dramatic change. When a new belief is introduced slowly, the brain begins building connections that support the updated identity. Each small step provides evidence that reinforces the next step. The mind becomes comfortable with the evolving belief because it feels like a natural extension of previous understanding rather than an abrupt contradiction. To understand how this process works in practice, imagine someone who has long believed they are not good at communicating with others. If they attempt to convince themselves that they are suddenly a charismatic speaker, the subconscious may reject the idea because it conflicts with past experiences. Instead, they might begin with a bridge belief such as "I am becoming more comfortable expressing my thoughts." This statement allows the mind to explore new possibilities without denying past experiences. As the person practices speaking in small situations, they accumulate new evidence that supports the evolving belief. Eventually, the bridge belief may evolve into "I communicate clearly and confidently." The transformation happens not through force but through gradual reinforcement. Bridge beliefs become even more powerful when combined with emotional engagement and visualization. As discussed earlier, the subconscious responds strongly to feelings and imagery. When a person repeats a bridge belief while imagining situations where that belief feels real, the mind begins associating the new idea with positive emotional experiences. For instance, someone developing confidence might visualize themselves speaking calmly during a conversation while feeling relaxed and self-assured. This mental rehearsal activates neural patterns similar to those involved in actual behavior. Over time, these repeated experiences help the subconscious accept the new identity. Another important aspect of this method is patience. The subconscious mind often resists sudden changes because it is designed to maintain stability. For many years, it has relied on familiar beliefs to interpret reality and guide behavior. Expecting immediate transformation can create frustration and self-criticism when progress appears slow. However, when change is approached as a gradual process, the mind has time to adjust. Each small shift becomes a foundation for the next one. A useful way to apply this principle is through a structured two-step process for subconscious reprogramming. The first step is entering a receptive mental state where the analytical gatekeeper becomes less dominant. As discussed in earlier sections, this state often occurs when the brain shifts into alpha or theta frequencies during deep relaxation or meditation. Slow breathing, calm focus, or listening to rhythmic sound patterns can help guide the mind into this receptive condition. When the body relaxes and mental tension decreases, the subconscious becomes more open to new ideas. The second step involves introducing bridge beliefs combined with emotional imagery. While the mind remains relaxed, the person repeats a carefully chosen statement that represents a realistic step toward the desired identity. At the same time, they imagine situations where this belief naturally expresses itself. The key is to allow genuine emotion to accompany the visualization. Even a mild sense of confidence or curiosity can strengthen the impression because the subconscious recognizes emotional experiences as meaningful signals. For example, someone seeking financial improvement might begin with the bridge belief, "I am learning to manage opportunities more wisely." While breathing calmly, they imagine themselves making thoughtful decisions, discovering new possibilities, and feeling increasingly capable. Over time, this repeated mental experience gradually reshapes the subconscious expectation about what is possible. As the belief evolves, the person naturally begins noticing opportunities that previously seemed invisible because their perception has changed. Consistency plays a critical role in this process. Just as physical exercise strengthens muscles through repeated practice, subconscious reprogramming strengthens new mental pathways through regular repetition. Even a few minutes each day can create significant changes when practiced consistently over time. Morning and evening are particularly effective periods because the mind naturally moves through relaxed states during these transitions between sleep and waking consciousness. It is also important to remain attentive to the emotional tone of the process. If a bridge belief begins to feel forced or unrealistic, it may trigger resistance from the analytical mind. In that case, the statement can be adjusted to feel more authentic. The goal is not to convince the mind of something impossible, but to guide it gradually toward a broader understanding of personal potential. The subconscious responds best when the new belief feels believable and emotionally supportive. As the bridge beliefs strengthen, individuals often notice subtle shifts in their behavior and perception. Actions that once felt uncomfortable become easier. Opportunities that previously seemed intimidating begin to appear manageable. These changes occur because the subconscious is updating its internal model of reality. When the mind believes that improvement is possible, it begins supporting behaviors that align with that belief. Over time, the bridge beliefs themselves may no longer be necessary because the new identity becomes integrated into everyday thinking. The person no longer needs to remind themselves that they are capable because their actions naturally reflect that understanding. The transformation has moved from conscious effort into subconscious habit. What once required deliberate practice now feels like a normal part of who they are. Bridge beliefs therefore represent a compassionate and realistic approach to personal change. Instead of fighting against the mind's protective mechanisms, they work with the natural processes of learning and adaptation. By guiding the subconscious step by step toward new possibilities, individuals can reshape deeply rooted patterns without triggering defensive resistance. In this gradual journey, each small belief becomes a bridge leading toward greater confidence, clarity, and alignment with the life they wish to create. Long before modern instruments could measure the invisible forces surrounding our planet, many ancient traditions believed that the earth itself carried a living rhythm. They spoke about the pulse of nature, the quiet vibration beneath the surface of the world that connects all living things. For centuries, this idea existed mainly in philosophy and spiritual teachings, often described as the breath of the planet or the heartbeat of the earth. Only in the 20th century did science begin to discover that this poetic intuition may have a physical foundation. In 1952, the German physicist Winfried Otto Schumann identified a natural electromagnetic resonance created between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere, the electrically charged layer of the atmosphere that surrounds the planet. Within this enormous cavity, electromagnetic waves continuously travel around the Earth and bounce between the ground and the ionosphere, forming standing waves that resonate at specific frequencies. The strongest of these frequencies averages around 7.83 Hz, a phenomenon now known as the Schumann resonance. This discovery revealed that the Earth is not electrically silent. Instead, it constantly produces a subtle background rhythm that exists everywhere on the planet. Lightning storms around the world generate electromagnetic energy that feeds this resonance, and the waves travel through the atmosphere at the speed of light, circling the globe again and again. Even though these signals are extremely weak compared to everyday electronic devices, they form a persistent natural pattern that has existed for millions of years. because life on Earth evolved within this electromagnetic environment. Some researchers have wondered whether biological systems may have adapted to function in harmony with these planetary rhythms. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Schumann resonance is how closely its primary frequency aligns with certain patterns of human brain activity. As discussed earlier, the human brain operates across different frequency ranges depending on mental state. Beta waves dominate during intense thinking and alertness. Alpha waves appear during relaxed awareness, and theta waves emerge during deep meditation or the transition into sleep. The bridge between alpha and theta often occurs near the 7 to 8 Hz range, which happens to be remarkably close to the 7.83 Hz resonance of the Earth. This similarity has inspired many researchers to explore the possibility that the human nervous system may naturally resonate with the planet's electromagnetic environment during states of deep relaxation and awareness. Although the relationship between the Schumann resonance and human consciousness is still being studied, the idea of resonance provides a useful metaphor for understanding how living systems interact with their surroundings. Resonance occurs when two systems vibrate at compatible frequencies and begin influencing each other. A familiar example can be seen when a tuning fork vibrates and causes another tuning fork tuned to the same pitch to vibrate as well. The second instrument does not require direct contact to respond. The shared frequency alone creates the connection. In a similar way, many scientists believe that biological rhythms such as heart rate, breathing patterns, and brainwave activity may interact subtly with the electromagnetic environment of the Earth. When the human nervous system is under constant stress, the brain often remains locked in faster beta frequencies associated with alertness and tension. In this condition, perception becomes narrow and reactive because the body is focused on potential threats. However, when the nervous system relaxes and the brain shifts toward alpha and theta states, the internal rhythms slow down and become more coherent. Breathing becomes deeper, the heart rhythm stabilizes, and the body releases chemicals that support healing and balance. These slower frequencies are not only associated with calm awareness, but also resemble the range of natural electromagnetic rhythms found in the Schumann resonance. This observation has led many researchers to consider the possibility that states of meditation or deep relaxation may represent a return to a more natural alignment between the human nervous system and the environmental rhythms of the planet. In other words, when the mind becomes calm and coherent, it may be functioning in a way that reflects the same fundamental patterns present in the natural world. This does not mean that the brain directly locks onto the Earth like a radio receiver. Instead, it suggests that our biology may operate most efficiently when internal rhythms resemble the stable frequencies that have surrounded life on Earth throughout evolution. Another factor that supports this idea is the well-documented effect of nature on mental health. Numerous studies have shown that spending time in natural environments such as forests, mountains, or near the ocean can significantly reduce stress and improve cognitive function. People who walk in nature often report feeling calmer, more focused, and more emotionally balanced. One reason for this effect may be the reduction of artificial stimulation and electronic noise that dominate modern urban environments. Another possibility is that natural settings allow the nervous system to synchronize more easily with the stable rhythms of the environment. Practices such as grounding or earthing also highlight this connection. When people walk barefoot on soil, sand, or grass, they establish direct electrical contact with the Earth's surface. Some studies suggest that this contact may allow subtle electrical charges to move between the body and the ground, helping regulate inflammation and stabilize biological rhythms. Although research in this area continues to evolve, many individuals report feeling noticeably more relaxed and centered after direct contact with the natural environment. The concept of the Schumann resonance therefore serves as a powerful reminder that human beings are not separate from the planet they inhabit. Our bodies evolved within the electromagnetic and biological rhythms of the Earth, and our nervous systems may still respond to those rhythms in subtle ways. When modern life disconnects us from natural cycles of daylight, movement, and environmental contact, the nervous system can become overstimulated and unbalanced. Returning to calm states of awareness through meditation, breathing, or time spent in nature may help restore a sense of internal harmony. Rather than viewing the Schumann resonance as a mystical frequency with magical powers, it may be more helpful to see it as a symbol of the deep relationship between human consciousness and the natural world. The same planet that supports our physical survival also provides a stable energetic environment within which our nervous systems developed. When our internal rhythms become calm and coherent, we may naturally align with the broader patterns of life that surround us. In this way, the idea of the Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat becomes more than a scientific curiosity. It becomes a reminder that balance within the human mind often reflects balance within the larger environment. When we slow down, breathe deeply, and allow our awareness to settle into the present moment, we begin to experience the quiet rhythm that has always existed beneath the noise of modern life. Within that rhythm, many people discover a sense of stability and connection that cannot be forced through effort alone. It arises through resonance, through the subtle harmony between the living systems within us and the living planet beneath our feet. The idea that human consciousness can move into harmony with the natural rhythms of the Earth may sound abstract at first. Yet in practice, the process is surprisingly simple. Our bodies are not separate from the environment. Every breath we take connects us with the atmosphere. Every step connects us with the ground. And every sensation we experience arises from constant interaction between our nervous system and the world around us. Because of this deep relationship, the human body already possesses the ability to synchronize with natural rhythms. What most people need is not a complicated technique, but a way to remove the constant interference created by stress, artificial stimulation, and mental overload. When that interference decreases, the nervous system often returns naturally to a calmer and more coherent state. One of the most direct ways to reconnect with the natural electromagnetic environment of the planet is through grounding, sometimes called earthing. Grounding refers to the simple act of making physical contact with the Earth's surface. Walking barefoot on grass, soil, sand, or natural stone allows the body to connect electrically with the ground beneath it. The surface of the Earth carries a subtle negative electrical charge due to the constant interaction between the atmosphere and the planet's core. When the human body touches the ground, electrons can move between the Earth and the skin, helping neutralize excess electrical charge that may accumulate in the body through daily exposure to electronic devices and environmental stress. Although this process is subtle, many people report feeling an immediate sense of relaxation when they spend time barefoot outdoors. The nervous system begins to calm, breathing becomes deeper, and mental tension gradually decreases. Some studies suggest that grounding may help regulate cortisol levels, reduce inflammation, and improve sleep patterns. Whether these effects arise primarily from electrical exchange, psychological relaxation, or a combination of both, the result is often the same. The body begins shifting toward a balanced state that supports slower brainwave activity and emotional stability. Another powerful method for synchronizing with natural rhythms involves exposure to natural light cycles. For thousands of years, human biology evolved under the regular pattern of sunrise and sunset. These daily changes in light influence the body's internal clock, known as the circadian rhythm. This rhythm regulates sleep, hormone production, digestion, and many other physiological processes. When people spend most of their time indoors under artificial lighting, the circadian rhythm can become disrupted. The brain may receive confusing signals about when to be alert and when to rest. Spending time outdoors during early morning or evening light helps recalibrate this internal clock, aligning the nervous system with the natural cycle of the planet. Morning sunlight in particular plays an important role in regulating brain chemistry. Exposure to natural light shortly after waking signals the brain to reduce melatonin production and increase alertness, promoting chemicals such as serotonin. Later in the evening, as natural light fades, the brain gradually increases melatonin again, preparing the body for sleep. This simple rhythm of light and darkness helps stabilize both mood and cognitive clarity. When the circadian rhythm becomes balanced, the brain is more likely to shift smoothly between active beta states during the day and restorative alpha or theta states during relaxation. Breathing practices also provide a direct pathway to synchronize the body with natural rhythms. The breath is one of the few physiological processes that operates both automatically and consciously. By slowing the breath and making it rhythmic, the nervous system receives signals that it is safe to relax. One particularly effective pattern involves breathing in slowly for 5 or 6 seconds and then exhaling for the same length of time. This balanced breathing pattern encourages the heart rhythm to stabilize and promotes the state of heart-brain coherence described earlier. As the body enters this calm state, the brain gradually shifts toward alpha frequencies, which closely resemble the natural background rhythms of the earth. Sound can also play a supportive role in guiding the mind toward these frequencies. As discussed earlier, binaural beats and other rhythmic audio patterns can gently encourage the brain to move into alpha or theta states. When these frequencies are combined with relaxation and focused breathing, they can help the mind settle into a calm rhythm that resembles the slower electromagnetic patterns present in nature. Listening to such sounds in a quiet environment allows the nervous system to step away from the constant stimulation of modern technology and return to a more natural tempo. Spending time in natural environments amplifies these effects even further. Forests, mountains, rivers, and oceans provide sensory experiences that differ dramatically from urban environments. Instead of sharp artificial sounds and constant visual stimulation, nature offers rhythmic patterns such as wind moving through trees, water flowing across stones, or waves rising and falling along a shoreline. These natural rhythms gently guide the nervous system towards slower and more coherent patterns of activity. Many people notice that their thoughts become quieter and their breathing becomes deeper when they spend time in these environments. Physical movement in nature can enhance this synchronization as well. Walking slowly through a park or along a trail allows the body to fall into a steady rhythm that matches the pace of breathing and heartbeat. This simple coordination between movement and breath encourages the brain to settle into calm awareness. Unlike intense exercise, which stimulates fast beta activity, gentle rhythmic movement promotes relaxation while maintaining alertness. In this state, many people find that creative ideas arise more easily and emotional stress begins to dissolve. Meditation offers another pathway to align internal rhythms with natural frequencies. When attention is directed inward and distractions are reduced, the brain gradually shifts away from analytical thinking and into deeper awareness. During meditation, the mind becomes more receptive to subtle sensations, including the rhythm of breathing, the beating of the heart, and the quiet presence of the body in space. Over time, this practice strengthens the ability to maintain calm focus, even in challenging situations. The nervous system becomes familiar with the sensation of coherence and learns to return to it more quickly. Ultimately, synchronizing with the natural frequency of the earth does not require special equipment or complex knowledge. It involves rediscovering the simple conditions under which the human body evolved to function best. Contact with the ground, exposure to natural light, slow rhythmic breathing, time spent in nature, and moments of quiet awareness all support the same outcome. They help the nervous system shift from constant stimulation toward a state of balance where the brain, heart, and body operate together in harmony. When this harmony develops, the mind often feels clearer and more stable. Stress reactions soften, perception becomes less reactive, and emotional balance improves. Instead of feeling disconnected from the world, individuals begin to sense a quiet alignment with the environment around them. In that state, the rhythms of the body and the rhythms of the planet appear to move together, creating a sense of grounded presence that supports both mental clarity and emotional well-being. For many people, the search for change begins with strategies. They read books about productivity, follow advice about habits, learn techniques for motivation, and create plans designed to improve their circumstances. These tools can be valuable, yet many individuals eventually discover that strategies alone rarely produce lasting transformation. A person may learn exactly what they should do to improve their life, yet still find themselves returning to the same patterns again and again. The reason is often deeper than discipline or effort. At the core of every action lies identity, the internal sense of who we believe ourselves to be. When identity remains unchanged, even the most powerful strategies struggle to create lasting results. Identity is not simply a label we consciously choose. It is a network of beliefs, memories, emotional associations, and expectations that the mind uses to define the self. From early childhood, the subconscious begins forming conclusions about personal abilities, value, and place in the world. These conclusions arise from repeated experiences with family, education, culture, and social interaction. Over time, they form an internal narrative that shapes perception. A person may come to believe they are creative or not creative, confident or shy, capable or limited. These beliefs feel natural because they have been reinforced through years of experience. Yet they are not permanent truths. They are patterns that can evolve. Identity influences behavior through a powerful psychological loop. First, a belief about the self creates a pattern of thought. Those thoughts influence decisions and actions. The actions then produce results that reinforce the original belief. For example, someone who believes they are not good with money may avoid financial decisions or hesitate to pursue opportunities. This behavior can lead to limited financial outcomes which appear to confirm the original belief. The cycle continues because the mind interprets the results as evidence that the identity is accurate. Breaking this loop requires more than changing actions. It requires examining the identity that produced those actions in the first place. This is where the concept of identity alchemy becomes important. Alchemy in ancient traditions referred to the transformation of ordinary substances into something more refined. In psychological terms, identity alchemy describes the process of transforming the internal narrative that defines who we are. Instead of focusing only on external goals such as earning more income or developing new skills, the individual begins exploring the deeper question of who they must become in order to create those outcomes naturally. When identity shifts, behavior and results often follow with much less resistance. The first step in identity transformation involves recognizing that identity is not fixed. Many people unconsciously treat their self-image as if it were permanent. They say statements such as, "I am not a creative person," or "I am always anxious," as though these qualities are permanent characteristics. In reality, these statements describe patterns that developed through experience rather than unchangeable truths. The brain is capable of forming new neural pathways throughout life, which means the internal model of the self can evolve as well. Awareness plays a crucial role in this process. By observing thoughts, emotional reactions, and habitual behaviors, a person begins to see the patterns that shape their identity. For instance, someone might notice that they consistently hesitate to share ideas in conversations. Instead of judging this behavior, they can explore the belief behind it. Perhaps the subconscious assumption is that their ideas are not valuable. Once the belief becomes visible, it can be examined rather than unconsciously controlling behavior. After recognizing existing patterns, the next stage of identity alchemy involves defining a new identity aligned with desired outcomes. This step does not mean pretending to be someone completely different. Instead, it involves clarifying the qualities the individual wishes to embody. For example, a person may choose to develop the identity of someone who communicates with clarity and confidence. Another might adopt the identity of someone who approaches challenges with curiosity rather than fear. These identities represent ways of being rather than specific achievements. Once the new identity is defined, the transformation begins through consistent alignment between belief and action. Each time a person behaves in a way that reflects the new identity, the brain records evidence that the change is real. Even small actions can have a powerful effect because they create new emotional experiences. When someone who previously avoided speaking begins contributing ideas in conversations, they experience the reality of their evolving identity. These experiences gradually reshape subconscious expectations. Visualization and emotional engagement also support this process. When individuals imagine themselves acting from their new identity while feeling the associated emotions, the brain begins preparing for those behaviors. Neural pathways related to confidence, creativity, or resilience strengthen through repeated mental rehearsal. Over time, the subconscious becomes more comfortable with the new self-image because it has encountered the pattern repeatedly. An important part of identity alchemy involves releasing attachment to outdated narratives. Many people continue carrying identities formed in earlier stages of life, even when those identities no longer serve them. A person who was once shy in childhood may unconsciously maintain that identity long after developing communication skills. By consciously recognizing that identities are flexible, the mind becomes open to new possibilities. The past no longer dictates the future because the individual understands that identity is a living pattern rather than a fixed label. Another helpful perspective is to view identity as an evolving story rather than a static definition. Stories change as new experiences unfold. A character who begins a story uncertain may gradually become confident through growth and learning. Human identity functions in a similar way. Each new action, belief, and experience contributes to the ongoing narrative of the self. By choosing actions aligned with the desired identity, the individual actively writes the next chapter of that story. Over time, identity transformation begins to influence perception. Opportunities that once seemed intimidating start to appear approachable because they align with the new sense of self. Decisions become easier because the individual is no longer debating whether they are capable. The identity itself provides guidance. When someone believes they are a disciplined person, they naturally make choices that support discipline. When someone sees themselves as a creative thinker, they approach problems with curiosity rather than hesitation. Ultimately, identity alchemy reveals that lasting change occurs from the inside out. Instead of constantly forcing behavior through willpower, the individual becomes the type of person for whom the desired behavior feels natural. Strategies and techniques still play a role, but they become tools used by a transformed identity rather than attempts to compensate for internal conflict. As identity evolves, the mind, emotions, and actions begin moving in the same direction. In that alignment, personal transformation becomes not only possible but sustainable because it reflects the person someone has truly become. Every human being lives within a powerful psychological cycle that quietly shapes their behavior, perception, and results. This cycle can be described as the identity loop. It begins with beliefs about who we are, which influence the thoughts we have each day. Those thoughts guide the actions we take, and those actions create the results we experience in our lives. Once the results appear, they reinforce the original belief, strengthening the identity that produced them. Over time, this loop becomes so automatic that most people rarely question it. They assume their current circumstances simply reflect reality, when in fact those circumstances may be the natural outcome of an identity that has been operating beneath awareness for many years. To understand this process more clearly, imagine someone who believes they are not naturally disciplined. This belief may have formed early in life through experiences at school or through comparison with others. Once the belief exists, it influences daily thoughts, such as, "I probably will not stay consistent," or "I usually lose motivation quickly." These thoughts affect behavior because the person approaches tasks with hesitation rather than commitment. When challenges arise, they may stop sooner than someone who expects themselves to be disciplined. As a result, their projects remain unfinished, reinforcing the original belief that they lack discipline. The loop continues, not because the belief is objectively true, but because the identity produces behaviors that confirm it. The same pattern operates with positive identities as well. A person who believes they are capable of learning new skills approaches challenges differently. Their thoughts focus on improvement rather than limitation. When difficulties appear, they persist longer because their identity supports perseverance. The actions they take lead to growth and achievement, which strengthen the belief that they are capable learners. In both cases, the identity loop drives behavior and results, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. Recognizing this loop is the first step toward transforming it. Once a person understands that identity influences behavior and behavior influences results, they can begin changing the process intentionally. Instead of waiting for external circumstances to change, they focus on adjusting the internal identity that shapes those circumstances. This shift represents a powerful form of personal agency because it moves attention from temporary outcomes to the deeper patterns that generate them. Building a new identity begins with clarity. The individual must decide what qualities they wish to embody rather than focusing only on external achievements. For example, instead of saying, "I want to be successful," they might define the identity of someone who takes consistent action toward meaningful goals. Instead of focusing solely on financial outcomes, they may develop the identity of someone who manages opportunities wisely and creates value for others. This distinction is important because identities guide behavior, while outcomes are simply results that follow behavior. Once the desired identity becomes clear, the next step involves observing the existing patterns that belong to the old identity. This stage requires honest self-awareness rather than judgment. The individual notices the thoughts, habits, and emotional reactions that reinforce the current identity loop. For instance, someone who wishes to become more confident may observe how often they hesitate before speaking or doubt their own ideas. By recognizing these patterns, they begin separating their awareness from the automatic identity that has guided them in the past. After identifying the old patterns, the individual introduces small actions that reflect the new identity. These actions are sometimes called evidence loops because they provide real experiences that support the evolving belief. Instead of waiting until they feel confident to speak in a meeting, they may contribute a brief idea, even if they feel uncertain. Each action becomes a piece of evidence that challenges the old narrative. The brain records these experiences and gradually updates the internal model of the self. The size of these actions matters less than their consistency. Small behaviors performed regularly are more powerful than dramatic efforts performed occasionally. When a person repeatedly takes actions aligned with the new identity, the brain begins recognizing the pattern as normal. The subconscious gradually shifts its expectations because the evidence supporting the new identity continues to accumulate. Over time, the person no longer needs to force the behavior because it has become part of their natural response. Visualization and emotional reinforcement can strengthen this process as well. When individuals imagine themselves acting according to their desired identity while feeling the associated emotions, the brain begins preparing for those experiences. For example, someone developing resilience might visualize themselves calmly, navigating a challenging situation while feeling composed and capable. This mental rehearsal activates neural pathways similar to those involved in real behavior. When the situation eventually occurs, the brain is already familiar with the pattern. Another important component of identity transformation is the willingness to release outdated narratives. Many people continue defining themselves through experiences that occurred years earlier. A single failure or criticism may shape identity long after circumstances have changed. By recognizing that identity is not fixed but evolving, the individual gains freedom to reinterpret those experiences. Instead of viewing past setbacks as proof of limitation, they can view them as steps in the process of growth. As the new identity strengthens, the individual begins noticing changes in perception. Opportunities that once seemed intimidating start appearing as possibilities for growth. The mind automatically looks for solutions rather than obstacles because the identity now supports capability. Emotional reactions also shift because the person interprets challenges through the lens of the new self-image. What once triggered self-doubt may now evoke curiosity or determination. Eventually, the identity loop reverses direction. Instead of reinforcing limitation, it begins reinforcing growth. The new beliefs influence thoughts that encourage productive action. Those actions create positive results, which strengthen the evolving identity. The cycle continues, but now it works in favor of the individual rather than against them. Change that once required intense effort becomes more natural because the subconscious mind has adopted the new identity as its internal reference. This transformation rarely occurs overnight. Identity develops through repeated experience, and changing it requires patience and persistence. However, the process becomes easier as the mind gathers evidence supporting the new narrative. Each aligned action adds another layer of reinforcement, gradually shifting the internal framework that guides behavior. In the end, the identity loop reveals a powerful truth about human potential. Our lives are not determined solely by circumstances, but by the patterns through which we interpret those circumstances. By consciously shaping identity, we influence the thoughts we think, the actions we take, and the results we create. The individual who understands this process no longer feels trapped by past definitions. Instead, they recognize that identity itself can evolve, allowing the future to unfold from a new foundation of belief and intention. Accessing the alpha-theta state is often described as a mysterious ability reserved for experienced meditators or people who have spent years practicing mental discipline. In reality, the human brain naturally enters this state every day during transitions between waking and sleep. The difference between occasional accidental access and consistent conscious access lies in practice. Just as physical fitness develops through repeated training, the ability to guide the mind into deeper states of awareness develops through simple habits practiced regularly. Over time, these habits teach the nervous system how to shift from constant mental activity into calm coherence, allowing the brain to move smoothly from beta thinking into the alpha-theta bridge, where intuition, creativity, and emotional clarity become more available. One of the most important factors in reaching this state is reducing the level of constant stimulation that keeps the brain locked in high beta activity. Modern life exposes the mind to continuous streams of information, notifications, screens, and rapid decision-making. This constant stimulation keeps the nervous system alert and often prevents the brain from relaxing naturally. The first step toward accessing alpha-theta states therefore involves creating intentional moments of quiet. These moments do not require complete isolation from the world. Even a few minutes in a calm environment without digital distraction can signal the brain that it is safe to slow down. Breathing practices play a central role in this transition because breathing directly influences the nervous system. When the breath becomes slow and rhythmic, the body receives signals that it is no longer under immediate threat. A simple technique involves inhaling slowly for 5 or 6 seconds and then exhaling for the same length of time. This balanced rhythm encourages the heart rate to stabilize and allows the brain to shift toward alpha frequencies. Within a few minutes, many people notice a reduction in mental chatter as the nervous system moves toward a calmer state. Another helpful practice is directing attention toward the body rather than the constant stream of thoughts. The mind often remains active because attention is repeatedly pulled into analysis and planning. By gently focusing awareness on physical sensations such as the movement of breath, the rhythm of the heartbeat, or the feeling of the body resting in space, attention shifts away from abstract thinking. This shift naturally reduces beta activity because the brain begins processing sensory information instead of evaluating problems. As awareness becomes more grounded in physical sensation, the brain gradually approaches the alpha state. Sound can also support this transition. Rhythmic audio such as binaural beats, slow instrumental music, or natural sounds like flowing water can guide the brain towards slower frequencies. These sounds provide a steady pattern that the nervous system can follow, encouraging the brain to synchronize its activity with the rhythm. When used in a quiet environment, this auditory support can make it easier for beginners to experience the calm focus associated with alpha states and eventually the deeper receptivity of theta. Visualization techniques further deepen the process by engaging the subconscious mind. When the brain enters alpha or theta frequencies, the boundary between imagination and emotional experience becomes more flexible. In this state, visualizing peaceful scenes or desired outcomes can produce genuine feelings of calm and confidence. For example, a person might imagine standing in a quiet, natural landscape while breathing slowly and feeling grounded. The brain interprets these vivid images as meaningful experiences, reinforcing the relaxed state. Consistency transforms these techniques from temporary relaxation into a reliable mental skill. Practicing even 5 or 10 minutes each day teaches the nervous system to recognize the transition from active thinking to calm awareness. Over time, the brain begins making this shift more quickly because it becomes familiar with the pattern. What once required effort gradually becomes easier as the body learns that entering a coherent state is safe and beneficial. Morning and evening are particularly effective times for this practice because the brain naturally moves through alpha and theta frequencies during these transitions. Shortly after waking, the mind is often still in a relaxed state where subconscious processing remains active. Taking a few minutes during this time to breathe slowly and visualize positive intentions can influence the tone of the entire day. Similarly, the period before sleep offers a natural opportunity to guide the brain into theta frequencies while reinforcing constructive mental patterns. Another important habit involves reducing substances that stimulate the nervous system excessively. Caffeine and other stimulants can increase beta activity, making it more difficult for the brain to relax deeply. This does not mean eliminating them entirely, but becoming aware of how they affect mental states can help individuals create conditions more supportive of calm awareness. Balanced hydration, regular sleep, and time spent away from screens also contribute to a nervous system capable of entering deeper states more easily. Movement practices such as yoga, Tai Chi, or slow walking meditation can also guide the brain toward alpha-theta states. These activities combine gentle motion with steady breathing and focused attention. The body moves rhythmically while the mind remains present, creating a bridge between physical awareness and mental stillness. Because the nervous system processes both movement and breath simultaneously, the brain gradually shifts away from analytical thinking toward a more integrated state of awareness. As these habits become part of daily life, the distinction between practice and natural experience begins to fade. The individual no longer needs a formal meditation session to access calm awareness. Instead, the nervous system becomes accustomed to shifting into coherent states whenever stress decreases or attention becomes focused. Simple moments such as sitting quietly, observing nature, or breathing deeply can bring the mind into the alpha-theta bridge. In this state, perception often changes in subtle but meaningful ways. Thoughts feel less crowded and more organized. Emotional reactions soften because the mind is no longer overwhelmed by stress signals. Creativity increases as the brain allows intuitive associations to emerge without immediate judgment. Many people report experiencing insights or solutions during these calm moments because the subconscious mind is able to communicate more freely. Practicing the transition into alpha-theta therefore represents more than a relaxation technique. It becomes a method of training the mind to access deeper levels of awareness where logic and intuition cooperate. Through repeated habits, the brain learns that calm focus is not a rare condition but a natural rhythm available at any moment. When this rhythm becomes familiar, the individual gains the ability to step out of constant mental noise and enter a state where clarity, creativity, and emotional balance arise naturally. True transformation does not happen through a single powerful moment of insight. It happens through rhythm, through the quiet repetition of small actions that gradually reshape the nervous system and the mind, just as the body becomes strong through daily movement rather than a single intense workout. Mental coherence develops through consistent alignment practiced throughout the day, when the brain, the heart, and the body repeatedly return to calm and balanced states. The nervous system begins to recognize this coherence as its natural baseline. Instead of constantly reacting to stress, the mind learns to remain centered, even when life becomes demanding. One of the most effective ways to support this process is to create a simple daily blueprint that gently guides the mind into coherent states during key moments of the day. The first important window occurs in the morning, shortly after waking. During the early moments after sleep, the brain naturally moves through slower alpha and theta frequencies before fully entering active beta thinking. This transitional period is one of the most receptive states of the entire day. The analytical gatekeeper is still quiet, and the subconscious mind is more open to suggestion and emotional influence. Instead of immediately reaching for a phone or engaging in stressful thoughts, this moment can be used to set the internal tone for the day. A few minutes of slow breathing while focusing attention on the heart can create a powerful shift in the nervous system. By inhaling gently for 5 or 6 seconds and exhaling with the same rhythm, the heart begins to stabilize and the brain receives signals of calm. While maintaining this breathing pattern, a person can imagine the day unfolding smoothly and successfully. The goal is not to force unrealistic expectations, but to create a sense of confidence and emotional balance. When the day begins from a coherent state, the mind becomes more resilient and less reactive to unexpected challenges. Exposure to natural light in the morning further strengthens this process. Stepping outside for a few minutes of sunlight helps regulate the circadian rhythm and signals the brain to begin the natural cycle of alertness and energy. Even a brief walk or a moment of quiet observation in nature can reinforce the calm awareness established during the breathing practice. This combination of breathing, visualization, and natural light helps align the nervous system with both internal and environmental rhythms, creating a stable foundation for the day. The second important moment occurs in the middle of the day. As responsibilities accumulate, the mind often returns to fast beta activity. Emails, conversations, and constant decision-making can gradually pull attention back into stress-driven thinking. Without awareness, this pattern may continue for hours, leaving the nervous system tense and mentally exhausted. Introducing a short pause during the afternoon can interrupt this cycle and restore coherence. This pause does not need to be long. Even 3 to 5 minutes of focused breathing can reset the nervous system. Stepping away from screens, relaxing the shoulders, and taking slow rhythmic breaths signals the brain that the body is safe. During this brief break, attention can return to the heart, allowing the emotional state to stabilize. If possible, spending a few minutes outside during this midday pause can amplify the effect. Walking slowly in a natural environment, even a small park or open space, helps the mind reconnect with sensory awareness rather than constant analysis. The sound of wind, the movement of trees, or the rhythm of footsteps can guide the nervous system back into a calmer pattern. When the mind returns to work after this short reset, it often feels clearer and more focused. Problems that previously felt overwhelming may now appear manageable because the brain is operating from coherence rather than stress. The final key window occurs in the evening before sleep. During this time, the brain naturally begins transitioning from beta activity into slower alpha and theta states as the body prepares for rest. Instead of filling this period with stimulating content or intense mental activity, it can be used to reinforce calm awareness and positive subconscious programming. Turning off bright screens, dimming lights, and allowing the environment to become quieter signals the brain that it is time to relax. A few minutes of heart-focused breathing once again helps stabilize the nervous system. While breathing slowly, a person can reflect on moments of gratitude or appreciation from the day. Even small, positive experiences can generate emotional signals that influence the heart rhythm. Gratitude naturally encourages coherence because it shifts attention away from stress and toward connection and appreciation. After focusing on these feelings, the mind can gently visualize the desired direction for the future. Imagining progress, growth, or meaningful experiences. Because the brain is already moving toward theta frequencies, these images often reach the subconscious more easily. As sleep approaches, the nervous system continues, integrating the emotional tone established during this practice. The subconscious mind processes memories and consolidates learning throughout the night. When the final thoughts before sleep are calm and constructive, they influence how the brain organizes experiences. This is why many people find that practicing gratitude or positive reflection before sleep improves both mood and sleep quality. Over time, repeating this simple morning, afternoon, and evening rhythm trains the nervous system to maintain coherence more consistently. The mind becomes familiar with returning to calm states rather than remaining trapped in stress patterns. Instead of relying on willpower to manage every challenge, the individual develops an internal stability that supports clear thinking and emotional balance. This daily blueprint is not intended to be rigid or demanding. Its strength lies in simplicity and consistency. Even brief moments of awareness practiced regularly can reshape the way the brain responds to the world. The key is repetition. Each time the mind returns to calm breathing, heart focus, and present awareness, it strengthens the neural pathways associated with coherence. Gradually, these pathways become the default response rather than the exception. In the long run, the purpose of this routine is not merely to relax the mind, but to transform the baseline state of the nervous system. When coherence becomes familiar, the brain spends less time in reactive stress and more time in balanced awareness. This shift influences every area of life, including decision-making, creativity, relationships, and physical health. By aligning daily habits with the natural rhythms of the body and environment, individuals create a stable internal foundation from which growth and transformation can unfold naturally. At a certain point in every journey of inner transformation, a quiet shift begins to take place. In the beginning, most people approach these ideas as students. They listen, they observe, they experiment with new practices, and they try to understand the mechanisms behind the mind, the nervous system, and consciousness. Learning is an important part of the process because knowledge provides a map of possibilities. However, knowledge alone does not transform a life. Real change begins when what was once a concept becomes a lived experience. The moment this transition happens, a person stops relating to these ideas as information and begins embodying them as a way of being. This is the moment when the individual moves from being a student of change to becoming a creator of their own reality. Living what can be called the quantum path does not mean controlling the universe or forcing outcomes through mental effort. Instead, it refers to a deeper understanding of how internal states influence perception, behavior, and opportunity. Throughout this journey, we have explored how the brain operates through frequencies, how the heart communicates with the mind, how subconscious beliefs shape identity, and how the nervous system can shift into states of coherence. When these elements begin working together, something remarkable happens. The individual stops reacting automatically to life and begins participating in it with conscious awareness. Choices become less driven by fear and more guided by alignment with inner clarity. One of the key characteristics of living this path is the shift from effort to coherence. Many people spend years trying to force change through discipline alone. They push themselves to think differently, act differently, and achieve different outcomes, while their internal state remains filled with tension and resistance. Living the quantum path involves a different approach. Instead of forcing change externally, the individual focuses on creating coherence internally. When thoughts, emotions, and identity move in the same direction, actions become natural rather than exhausting. Decisions arise from clarity rather than conflict. The mind becomes a partner in transformation rather than an obstacle. This shift also changes the way challenges are experienced. In a reactive state, problems often appear as threats that must be avoided or overcome quickly. In a coherent state, challenges become signals that reveal opportunities for growth. Because the nervous system remains balanced, the mind can evaluate situations with greater perspective. Instead of responding with panic or avoidance, the individual observes the situation, listens to intuition, and acts with intention. This calm awareness allows solutions to emerge that might not be visible in a stressed state. Another important element of this path is embodiment. Embodiment means allowing knowledge to move beyond intellectual understanding into everyday behavior. For example, learning about heart coherence is valuable, but its true impact appears when a person actually pauses during a stressful moment, slows their breathing, and restores emotional balance. Understanding identity transformation is helpful, but its power is realized when the individual consistently acts according to the identity they wish to embody. Each action becomes a declaration of who they are becoming. Over time, these actions reinforce the new identity until it feels natural. Embodiment also changes the way people interact with others. When someone lives from coherence, their presence itself becomes stabilizing. Conversations feel more grounded because they are not driven by defensiveness or anxiety. Listening becomes deeper because the mind is not preoccupied with preparing responses. Empathy grows because the heart and brain are communicating in harmony. In many cases, this internal alignment influences the emotional atmosphere around them. Others may feel calmer and more open simply by interacting with someone who carries this state of balance. Living this path also involves recognizing the importance of small moments. Many people imagine transformation as a dramatic breakthrough that changes everything instantly. In reality, transformation often unfolds through quiet decisions made throughout the day. Choosing to breathe calmly instead of reacting impulsively. Choosing to act with confidence even when uncertainty appears. Choosing to observe thoughts without becoming trapped by them. Each of these small choices reinforces the coherent identity being developed. Over time, these micro-moments accumulate into a powerful shift in perception and behavior. As coherence becomes familiar, the mind begins to trust the process of life more deeply. The constant need to control every outcome gradually softens. This does not mean abandoning responsibility or effort. Instead, it means recognizing that clarity and creativity arise more naturally when the mind and body operate in balance. The individual continues to take action, but those actions come from alignment rather than pressure. Opportunities appear because perception expands, and the mind becomes capable of recognizing possibilities that were previously hidden by stress. Another aspect of living the quantum path is the understanding that identity is always evolving. The person who begins this journey is not the same person who completes it. Each stage of growth reveals new layers of awareness and potential. Rather than clinging to a fixed self-image, the individual learns to remain open to transformation. This openness keeps the mind flexible and curious. It allows new experiences to shape the ongoing evolution of identity rather than being filtered through outdated beliefs. Over time, the practices explored throughout this journey begin blending into everyday life. Breathing awareness becomes automatic during stressful situations. Moments of stillness appear naturally during the day. Gratitude arises more frequently because attention shifts toward meaningful experiences rather than constant worry. The nervous system learns that coherence is its natural state rather than a rare exception. From this foundation, the mind becomes capable of creativity, resilience, and insight in ways that once seemed difficult. Ultimately, living the quantum path means recognizing that the most powerful transformation begins within the internal landscape of consciousness. The external world continues to present challenges and uncertainties, yet the individual no longer feels powerless in the face of those conditions. By maintaining coherence between thought, emotion, and identity, they influence how reality is perceived and experienced. They become participants in the unfolding of their life rather than passive observers of circumstance. In this way, the journey comes full circle. What began as curiosity about the mind and the hidden rhythms of the nervous system becomes a new way of living. The person who once searched for answers now carries the practices that generate those answers from within. They understand that clarity does not always arrive through analysis alone, but through alignment with deeper awareness. By embodying this understanding, they move forward not merely as someone who learned about transformation, but as someone who lives it each day, shaping their reality through the quiet power of coherence, attention, and presence.